enhanced out-of-class learning on radio, television, and online. Catch the lessons every weekday on KBC Channel 1 from 2 to 4 p.m., on KBC English Service and 15 FM from 9:15 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Radio Taifa from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. KBC English Service, Radio Taifa, and 15 FM are also available countrywide on the free-to-air Signet digital TV platform, or log on to www.kbc.co.ke for live streaming, or download the KBC Online app on Google Play Store. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, ensuring learning no matter what.
Top of the morning is Monday, the 20th of April, 2020. Good morning. Karibu tena sana to Good Morning Kenya. I'm Jane Wamboy. Now, today being Monday, we always get to focus on matters concerning the family, and we continue with the series of discussions that we have been having in regards to positive parenting during this time that we are at home with our children. And today we're going to be talking about parenting and substance use, trying to see how you as a parent, you can open the channel of communication and understand, how your child thinks when it comes to alcohol and substance use, and how you can best position yourself to be the point of reference when it comes to how your child interacts with drugs and other substances out there. That is a discussion that will be coming up in and not too long. And of course, we will be giving you the communication platforms through which you can send us your thoughts, any questions or comments that you may be having in regards to the discussions that we are going to be having today. Welcome once again.
And this fine Monday morning, Eye on Politics will be the talk of the town this morning as we talk about what has been trending in the past 1 week. Remember one thing, Jubilee Party wrangles. We've had a lot of debate, a lot of arguments from our Jubilee Party leaders and other members of Parliament in regards to the changes within Jubilee Party. This morning, we'll be putting into focus that, putting that into perspective, with some leaders saying that these wrangles are tied to the 2022 politics, the presidential succession of His Excellency Honorable William Samoei Ruto. But is that the case? Remember, Honorable Raila Odinga says that all these wrangles are also tied to the handshake. Some leaders saying that the marriage, quote unquote, is linked to Honorable Raila Odinga. Is this the way to go? Will this end up in court? These are the questions we'll be asking this morning on Eye on Politics. A very good morning to you. My name is Ram Aguko.
Now, Kenya has tested 13,239 cases of COVID-19 with 67 recoveries and 14 deaths, as well as 270 confirmed cases. Good morning. You're watching Good Morning Kenya, and I'm Regina Manyara Gitao. Now, that and so much more coming up in not too long on the Good Morning Kenya news briefs.
This morning we speak to Pastor Irene Kimathi. She will be telling us about the effects of coronavirus to the church ministry. Remember, public gatherings were banned in a bid to curb the spread of this disease. And so how has that affected the church ministries, especially for those faithfuls that believe we have to be physically in church for there to be church? So how has this banning of this gathering affect the church ministry, affect the faithful? That is what she'll be helping us understand this morning. My name is Dorina Range. Good morning.
And of course, not forgetting in the headlines, having a quick look at what is in the headlines and key among the stories that are on the front page days in regards to how Kenyans are misbehaving, and more so the younger category who have been out partying, house parties, and going out on trips and not observing social distancing, as well as the usage of masks while you are in public. We'll be telling you more of that in not too long once we get to In the Headlines. But for now, let us know where you're watching us from this morning. The hashtag to use on Twitter is Good Morning Kenya. At KBC Channel 1 is our official station handle. My handle is Genuine Boy, and my colleagues as well at Ramaguko, at Ray Manyara, and at Dorina Range. But if you so prefer to send us a message, 20154 is the number. A name and location is always appreciated.
Now, without further ado, let us look at those stories that have been making headlines in the last 24 hours. And we start off with some sad news where more than half a dozen people are reported to have died, while several others are still missing following heavy downpour in Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot counties. Over 1,000 residents of Chesogon area have been left homeless after their houses were swept downstream by the flash floods. Search and rescue efforts are ongoing even as the weatherman wants more rain in the region. This comes as President Uhuru Kenyatta directs Interior Ministry to coordinate and upskill search and rescue efforts in view of finding the missing persons, among them a police officer.
This man almost got swept away by the raging waters in a desperate attempt to save his motorbike. More than half a dozen people lost their lives in the Saturday evening incident, while several others are still missing both in West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet counties.
We have about 23 from Elgeyo Marakwet missing. The search and rescue is going on, but we've established a command center at Sabalas Primary School. And right now, as I'm talking to you, relief food supplies are being ferried from Eldoret to Sabalas Catholic Church.
Watu walikuwa senda Chesogon, watu zaidi ya 200 walikuwa senda. Kufika saa 9:30 ripoti ilifika kwamba kuna mnyonyoko imekuja kwa nguvu sana. So watu walitera upande wa Marakwet ndio walituokoa. Wakalia wakasema kwamba kimbieni kutoka senda. Watu walitarau kutoka senda, wengine wakabaki.
Nimechukuliwa nyumba, nilikuwa nimetumia kama hoteli na nilikuwa nimeweka kila kitu ndani, na pia nilikuwa nimefuka mbuzi na ng'ombe. Na hao wanyama wote walichukuliwa na maji, kila kitu ilichukuliwa. Mimi mwenyewe nikitazama.
Elgeyo Marakwet County Commissioner Ahmed Omar told Channel 1 that police officers were among those rescued from the fast-flowing waters after being dragged downstream for kilometers across the West Pokot-Elgeyo Marakwet border. More than 120 houses were swept away by the floods, leaving over 1,000 people displaced.
We're still worried because the rains may continue tonight and even for the whole of next week. You know that we were informed, we were alerted about the rains. And so we urge the residents to be on the alert and be able to move to high ground so that they are not exposed to the hazards.
The government on Sunday deployed a multi-agency team to the area to spearhead search and rescue efforts, as well as provide some relief assistance to the flood victims. In November 2019, heavy rainfall triggered landslides and flooding in West Pokot, killing 54 people in Weiwei, Tapach and Batay. For Channel 1 News, I am Edward Kabasa.
Now, 8 more people tested positive for the coronavirus in Kenya, raising the total number to 270. Also, 2 people succumbed to the disease during the same period, bringing the death toll to 14 since Kenya confirmed its first case in March. Now, the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, says the government is concerned that the disease is now spreading among the local population.
The death toll from COVID-19 in Kenya rose to 14 Sunday after 2 more people succumbed. Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, is saying positive cases had also gone up to 270 after 8 new confirmations.
Now, since our last update yesterday, we've tested an additional 1,330 cases. And out of these samples, 8 have tested positive for coronavirus, bringing the total number of confirmed cases in the country to 270. 7 are Kenyans and 1 is a foreign national, and none of these cases has a history of travel. 3 emanated from our quarantine centers, and 5 were picked by our surveillance teams from various parts of the country.
4 of the patients are from Mombasa, 3 Nairobi, and 1 from Kajiado. Nairobi now has 196 cases, Mombasa 47, Kilifi 8, Mandera 6, Kajiado 3, Kitui 2, Siaya 2, Nakuru 2, Uasin Gishu, Kwale, Kakamega, and Homa Bay 1 each.
So far, we have succeeded in containing the imports, and in the last few days, the very few cases are emanating from our regional quarantine centers. Therefore, fellow Kenyans, we are now worried about local transmission. I'm glad to announce that the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret and Kenyatta National Hospital here in Nairobi are now testing for COVID-19 disease. The MTRCH tests cover a scope of 22 counties, and this will enable transfer of samples from those countries, reducing the turnaround time.
According to the ministry's figures, the situation in Mombasa is not promising either, with all major estates recording a case. 7 more patients were discharged during the last 24 hours. The government now warning that those who will be found violating the curfew regulations will be placed on a 14 days mandatory quarantine.
Going forward, fellow Kenyans, all those who break the curfew rules will be assumed to have been in contact with suspected cases and hence will be quarantined for a period of 14 days.
By April 19, a total of 2,661 contacts had been monitored, out of which 2,047 have been discharged. Meanwhile, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha is calling for calm, saying the ministry has options should the pandemic affect the education calendar.
I am aware that the parents are very, very apprehensive, but they should be fair to themselves, because government has not pronounced itself that the exam will be postponed. And after His Excellency the President concurs with what the Ministry of Education has methodically gone through, I hope that during the course of next week, we shall tell you the various scenarios that we have come up with.
Purity Museo, Channel 1 News.
The COVID-19 spread continues to send a lot of anxiety across the globe as a cure is yet to be found for that deadly pandemic. We'll be keeping tabs on that and looking at what government has done as far as putting up precautionary measures, as also providing some of the PPPs, especially to those on the front line, and that is within the healthcare sector. Now, police officers along the Rironi roadblock in Limuru arrested 4 people trying to evade the Nairobi lockdown. The 4 had no proper documents to facilitate their crossing from Nairobi metropolis that is currently under lockdown. Police have scaled up surveillance along the roadblock after it emerged that Kenyans were playing every trick to beat the city lockdown.
It was the end of the road for these 4 people in Rironi area, Limuru constituency, Kiambu County, who are trying to evade the police roadblock along the Nairobi-Nakuru highway.
Anya rudi zimefungwa. Hata mimi ukiniangalia niko na matope huku, nimejaribu kupitia huko nikatarawa mbio sana.
The 4 who were on their way to Western Kenya had tried to cross as pedestrians, taking advantage of the relaxed rule for those living along the common cut lane.
Matatu walikuwa wanatumikia panya route wakipita. Yeah. Lakini sasa hii imekuwa vigumu kwa polisi wametia foleni mahali popote.
Police manning the barrier have heightened surveillance after a driver ferrying fake mourners from the city intercepted in Homa Bay was found to have the coronavirus on Saturday.
We were told once we were in the mortuary that those procedures will have to follow. And one of them was to get in touch with the regional commanding officer in charge of the COVID issue. And when now we were traveling, we wrote a letter to the same effect, which we took there.
All vehicles crossing the barrier are now being subjected to thorough screening before being cleared to ensure only genuine cases are allowed to proceed.
Sema tukuwe na barua kutoka mahali niko. Kama ni Nairobi, nikuwe na barua kutoka the regional commandant.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Timothy Kipnosu.
Now, this comes at a time when Kenyans are expectantly waiting to see if indeed the lock-in of the Nairobi metropolis, including Mombasa and Kwale, And as well, those 4 counties that were locked in, or rather Nairobi County especially, the metropolis is going to be lifted as the days expire sometime next week. We'll be keeping tabs on that. Now, Nairobi residents are set to benefit from free sanitizer spray booths, which have been erected in various parts of the city as a measure to combat the COVID-19. The initiative, courtesy of Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko, will be replicated in all city estates.
The sanitizers spray booths at Kencom in Nairobi Central Business District.
This is part of the 50 booths that have come into the country that will be set across different parts of the city to help keep our city safe.
The social distance proving a challenge as city residents scramble to have a feel of the capital's new initiative and get disinfected from coronavirus. The spraying cubicles would disinfect at least 3 people all in one go. According to the Ministry of Health, Nairobi takes the lead in confirmed cases in the country. The sanitizer spray booths are expected to be spread to estates within the city.
We are targeting all the major bus stations that we have in the city center. The booths were also installed in Kibra and many other parts across Eastlands. So our intention is to reach out to as many of those places where we have huge populations of our residents.
A move welcomed by city residents.
Mitaa ndio ziko na watu wengi ili watu wazidi kufaidika. Ukiona mara si moja watu wa mitaani ndio wanakuanga wakijikusanyika. So wakipata kitu kama hiyo wakipita ndani watakuwa kwa sawa na hawata affect sana na COVID-19.
Meanwhile, a private cleaning agency has embarked on fumigation exercise in Mombasa police stations with an aim to disinfect the public places. Coast Cleaners and Gardeners Chief Executive Officer Dickson Waweru said police are among the most vulnerable groups and thus need to enhance their safety during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Kuna watu wengine ambao wamefanya kazi zao pengine usiku na mchana amekuja kuripoti hapa, hauwezi jua amemiti na akina nani. So pale kwa polisi panakuja na kila aina ya watu na wengine wanatoka hata kwenye kaunti zingine tofauti.
Mombasa is one of the regions with confirmed coronavirus cases and reported deaths. Nairobi County becomes the second to launch sanitization booths after Mombasa. This as the country unites towards the fight against COVID-19. Many are hopeful that the pandemic will come to an end sooner rather than later. Irene Mchuma Odim, Channel 1 in the county of Nairobi.
Indeed, we'd want to remind you that indeed we're streaming live both on Facebook as well as YouTube. So get there. And Ben Samula, thank you for saying hi. Indeed, we're glad to inform you. And you've said, yes, you're watching this particular broadcast from the North Rift Eldoret. Thank you very much. Just keep your feedback coming. Tell us what it is that you want us to follow up on in as far as news is concerned. And also just give us an update of the rains that have been hitting several parts of the country. Is the North Rift Eldoret a part of it, or wherever it is that you are you experiencing that heavy downpour? Now, still keeping up with the update on COVID-19 is that county governments of Vihiga has suspended cess taxes in all its markets as it measured to cushion small businesses from effects of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Governor Wilbur Otichilo says the taxes will be reintroduced once the country pulls through the current health crisis, which threatens to cripple the economy.
Speaking when he launched new isolation wards in Vihiga County, Governor Wilbur Otichilo announced a tax waiver to all small traders for a period of 3 months.
Hatutatosha ushuru wowote mpaka miezi 3, so that watu wale wanafanya biashara ndogo wakipata kitu kidogo waende watumie nyumbani.
In Busia County, residents of Butula are set to benefit from jerrycans and soaps, courtesy of the Constituency Development Fund, in a measure aimed at preventing an outbreak of the novel coronavirus. Area CDF representative Hezron Odongo says hand-washing stations will be installed strategically in all markets.
We are only targeting mwananchi wa kawaida, yule wa chini, yule mwenye hana uwezo kufikia yale maji kunawa. Ndio tumetarget tuende kwa kila soko, kwa maana lazima watu wawe pale, lakini wao wasafi kulingana na sheria ambayo imewekwa.
And Kilifi County government is to commence distribution of relief food to over 50,000 people beginning Monday. The donations were sourced from organizations and philanthropic individuals to be distributed to the neediest members of the society affected by movement restrictions put in place by the government to alleviate effects of the coronavirus outbreak.
The food which we are now putting in packages of hampers, the ones which are in Mtwapa will be serving the people of Kilifi South, Rabai, and Kilifi and Kaloleni. And the food in Kilifi will be serving the people of Kilifi North and Ganze.
Moving on, residents of Ruai and Jiru villages in Embakasi constituency in Nairobi County had a reason to smile after well-wishers donated foodstuffs in a bid to cushion them from COVID-19.
We did not want to call them here to have a crowd. That is where we are moving from household to household to hand over the donation.
Finally, Wajir Governor Ambassador Mohamed Abdi Mahmoud has promised to donate more foodstuffs to the vulnerable. Speaking while distributing foodstuff to 450 Islamic teachers in Wajir town, Governor Mahmoud empathized with owners of the learning institutions whose sources of livelihood was disrupted by the global coronavirus outbreak.
The closure of mosques, madrasas and duxis, that is the Quran schools, so as to enforce the recommended protocols, has made our madrasa teachers, imams and their families' livelihoods disrupted, thereby requiring urgent interventions, especially as we usher in the month of the Holy Ramadan.
Suleiman Yeri, Channel 1 News.
Now, despite the coronavirus pandemic, Kenyans across the country enjoyed their Sunday spiritual nourishment at home. A number of churches directed their members to follow church services online as the country puts in strict measures to control the spread of the deadly virus. Others have resorted to have their services on radio and television.
Due to the global coronavirus pandemic, most churches have requested their members to stay at home and follow the Sunday services online and via radio and television and pay their tithes and offerings through mobile money transfer services and online payment platforms. At the Holy Family Basilica in a mass streamed live by KBC Channel 1, Bishop David Kamau urged Kenyans to take the coronavirus pandemic challenge to focus on helping each other.
Huu ndio wakati tunahitaji kufuata na kuiga mfano wa Wakristo wa kwanza ili tufaulu na kuokoka kama taifa. Kuishi pamoja kama ndugu na dada ni muhimu sana. Wakati huu Wakristo wapenzi, tuwe na roho na nia na lengo moja ya kupambana na adui COVID-19. Kushirikiana na kama familia moja. Tunahitaji wakati huu kuwa family united. Kila mmoja wetu awe brother's keeper.
My hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my soul.
The script was the same at the All Saints Cathedral here in Nairobi, where Kenyans were urged to spearhead the fight against the virus so as to emerge victorious, just as Christ defeated death.
Is coming. Victory is coming. God has never left you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. And out of this, I'm seeing testimonies loading, which will be testimonies of COVID. God, we were there, but now we are here. Nothing has changed.
Now more people are dying of fear.
In Nakuru at the Metro Ministries, the faithfuls who followed the service online were reminded to be their brother's keeper at this trying time.
But we as a church, we're here to let you know we love you. We are praying for you. Yes. We believe God for your life. Yes. We believe God to keep your family. Yes. It shall be well with you. Amen. It shall be well with our country. Amen. It shall be well with our government. Amen. We are praying for our government. So the church building is closed, but the church is still on fire.
So there's only one way. He was the only one resurrected. So in the process of everything that's going on, I've been doing this for years, and that's praying every day. Even when I had a job, I would get up an hour early just so I could talk to my Father in heaven. And I still keep him in mind all day during the day. I may say a few small things during the day, but mainly you need to talk to your Father. Talk to Jesus every day.
Many churches opted for online services, and other measures adopted by churches include ensuring masses do not go beyond 1 hour, having a lean congregation, and even spraying their church premises with disinfectants to kill bacteria and viruses as measures of containing the spread of the coronavirus. For Channel 1 News, I'm Ben Troenjo.
This brings me to a question. I'm sure you've seen it on social media, Kenyans, as usual, especially on Twitter, saying with this COVID-19, it has shown us one thing, that we do not need to congregate in one place, especially for mass or a church service. And they questioned the issue of tithe. Well, I don't know about you. Now, as Kenyans slowly adopt the culture of wearing masks as a preventive measure in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, concerns are rife on the adherence to the mask etiquette. On a spot check on the streets revealed how Kenyans are fond of hanging their mask below their chin, some on and some even on their foreheads.
A walk on the streets of Nairobi, as well as many other towns in the country, shows of how Kenyans are slowly adapting to the new culture of wearing masks, especially while in public places. The development coming in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. Almost on every street in the city, Kenyans are seen donning masks made of different materials, color, size, name them. But do Kenyans really observe the mask etiquette as required? A spot check on the streets revealed how Kenyans occasionally are fond of hanging their masks below the chin. Some put them on the forehead.
When I'm eating, I usually remove the mask the way I've removed. And then after I eat, sometimes I do like breathing a little bit, so I remove it and then I return it back. I know it's very risky, but you know, we guys haven't been used to doing masks, so it's a bit uncomfortable.
Na customer akija, lazima nitoe hivi kidogo ndio anipate, because huwezi ongea kama iko hivi message.
Some of the Kenyans we spoke to say they only know of basics in handling a mask.
Mostly, as I've seen on the screen, is like you have to handle it from the back of your ears. You don't have to touch in front of the mask when you are trying to remove it.
Belani walikuwa wanatuzia bila makaratasi, yani kama wamezikava. Lakini this time loud wanazikava. Sasa tunaangalia hiyo kitu.
Kwa siku natumiaga mask mbili. I'm not able to use more than that. Na zile nimefika nazo kwa nyumba, I normally advise my wife anaosha, anaziweka save.
Many, however, still find it a challenge to change to wear more than one mask a day.
Hii mask tunauziwa 100. Challenge ni kwamba tunaambiwa tuvae siku moja, lakini sasa kupata 100 kila siku inakuwa ngumu kuipata.
Siwezi faa more than one. So inabidi, ndio maana nikanunua hii ya kitambaa, ndio huwa naenda sometimes na sanitize ndani, nikifika kwa nyumba na iosha.
With various types of masks available on the streets, Kenyans believe there is need for the government to further educate them on the issues around masks and, if possible, get rid of those that may not be effective.
But hizi za huko ni poa, lakini kupumua at least wajaribu kutengeneza kitu standard ambapo mtu anaweza pumua.
Mimi tu jaribu kufuata sheria, utoa tena urudisha, lakini hapo kidogo ningeomba serikali jaribu kupatia watu mafunzo ya kutosha.
Kamchemenza for Channel 1 News.
This comes at a time, or rather in the wake of an investigation to some unscrupulous traders who are washing disposed of masks and selling them off to unsuspecting Kenyans, especially on the streets. And the government there has come out to say that you need to get that particular face mask that you're using from a reputable source and avoid this that are being hawked on the streets. And also Kenyans are questioning as to when the government is going to start distributing these particular PPEs to them, especially the face masks, in light of that particular development. Remember, we are urging you to be safe, so take the precautionary measures seriously. Now, a 17-year-old John Masioko, as his pals would call him, Rap Boy, has lived in the streets of Nairobi for approximately 3 years after his biological father rejected him as his child. Now, Masioko says he decided to join Nairobi street kids at least to beg for money and support his ailing mother and his siblings. While in the streets, Masioko found something that could keep him away from glue sniffing and petty crimes: the music world. Ben Chimber had a chat with him on his life and talent, which he believes holds the key to his future.
It is in one of the streets in Nairobi that I met John Masioko with his friends. They seem to cling to the food that a good Samaritan has just brought at a time when the street urchins are struggling to have just a meal as the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic bite.
Kabla upate mtu sahi anaweza kubaya chakula, juu kila mtu yasema kumeka huko, unaenda kuomba mtu anakuambia hakuna kitu. Mwingine hata anaweza kuuliza kwani una kwenu, surudi kwenu, alafu ukikumbuka shida zenye zilikutoa kwenu unakuja majungu mengi, unaona. So kwa sahi tunapata shida sana, chakula saa zingine kupata ni shida. Hii kafyu ikikupata usiku ni ngori. Face mask, kuna mwenye akiangusha anasema ni corona atapata. So sisi tunakujia, tunaosha tu.
At first I wanted to know what made this little boy live Thika, where he was born, to a life of misery and suffering in the streets of Nairobi.
Pia nilienda kumtembelea babangu nikiwa mkubwa, lakini nilipoenda alinifukuza akaniambia bibi yake ataniona. Na fare kutoka hapo, nilikuwa nimetoka from Thika hadi huko kunaitwa Swani, miguu, na fare ni inakuwa shilingi 100. Nikamuomba hiyo 100 nirudi nyumbani, na babangu by the kazi na ambayo alikuwa anaifanya ina pesa na hata ana gari, lakini hakunipatia hata hiyo 100 ya fare, hakunipatia. Nitoka huko na nilikuwa nimeacha mamangu, alikuwa mgonjwa kwa kitanda, ndo nilikuwa nimekuja kumwambia nikimtembelea, lakini hata hakunipatia hata fare.
But despite the challenges he faces, his face tells a different story altogether of a happy and cheerful boy.
Yale umenite ndabla wewe singeweza nikupe tu agenda. You are my defender, ni wangapi wamedai wallahi.
By virtue of his artistic name, Rap Boy is one of the most popular child in the streets because of his rare talent in music.
Ikifika kitu saa 7 hivi na kuja mbio hapa Taskis kuomba hiyo pesa. So nikipata mtu nikimuomba namwambia pia na usearch kwa YouTube Rap Boy Kenya, utapata pale nyimbo zangu. So hiyo kuwatch, wana view, wengine wana subscribe pia, nawaambia subscribe, like, share. Na wajue street kuna talent. Juu si mimi peke yangu, pia kuna wengine wako na talent, lakini support tu hakuna. Nani bila wewe mimi nani?
Rap Boy tells me the journey of his dream of becoming a musician and whether he is making a living from his talent.
Kiso nilikuwa naenda kwa dereva nampatia hiyo kadri dangu anaeka pale. So beat kwanza na pause, naongea na watu naelezea mimi nani, nimetoka wapi, nini ambacho nakifanya, alafu tena naanza kuwaimbia. Then after nimewaimbia nawaambia unaweza ni support for studio na hii na hii. So kuna wenye walikuwa kirecord, wengine wananipatia chakula, unaona. So ningepatia chakula pale.
Despite dropping out of primary school, Masioko believed that there is a day when his star will shine.
That's why mimi nasema ningependa nikifanikiwa nitamsaidia mamangu kumtoa kwa hayo maisha, na pia I'll make my children some atoe wa street kabisa.
He is now appealing to well-wishers to come to his aid. Ben Chumba reporting for Channel 1 News.
How about that? Talent there. When everyone is anxious over COVID-19, that young boy there, Rap Boy there, Masioko saying that he believes that the future is bright. We need to keep the hope alive for people such as Rap Boy and everyone else who has hope about that we indeed, as a people, especially as Kenyans, are going to get out of this safe and sound, if at all we adhere to the set down measures to curb the spread of the deadly pandemic. Remember, So far, we have 270 cases of COVID-19 with 67 recoveries and 14 deaths. We'll be getting updates subsequently in our subsequent bulletin as the Ministry of Health as well as the Cabinet Secretary there of Health, Mr. Mutahi Kagwe, gives his address. Now, about just this time, just some of the stories that across the counties also, just to highlight, is that the Migori Governor, of course, Obado, wants locals to consider restricting their movements beyond the county. Now, Obado also says that it's the rate at which the virus is spreading is alarming and would be wise to tighten precautionary measures to avoid a possible spread. This is a sentiment echoed across the country, both at the national and county level. Remember, we urge you to stay home and stay safe. All those who are rendering essential services, also ensure that you have a mask, sanitize and wash your hands then and as one, so that we can we can ease or rather stem the spread of this deadly virus. A quote was mentioned last week, and it says, the virus doesn't move itself, we move it. You and I move it. So for us to just stem on that spread is just watch or rather maintain high standards of hygiene that includes sanitizing where you do not have soap and water, use a face mask, especially in a public setup, just to ease the spread of that. Now that takes us to the other segment. We look at what we have on our local dailies, and I hand you over to the other side of the studio with Jane to take us through the first daily this morning that we're going to be looking at on the news headlines.
Absolutely. In the headlines starts now, and we start off with the Daily Nation, and the main story here on the front page of the Daily Nation is in regards to COVID-19, and here it states reckless youth fueled spread of COVID-19. Reckless youth fuel the spread of COVID-19, and in brief here he talks about a story that has angered quite a lot of people on the net. The netizens haven't been so happy with this story, as he just talks about how from a Kenya Red Cross ambulance ferrying drunken young people home to weekend house parties and hangouts in Gong Hills, tea farms in Tigoni, Konabaridi, City Park and the Arboretum, Kenyans are behaving badly. Now, this is in complete defiance to the regulations that have been put in place to help curb the spread of COVID-19. And here we have the CAS for Health, who has been quoted saying, looking at the age distribution, the coronavirus is affecting the more productive members of our society. And this means we need to take charge and observe the interventions being put in place. And going into the paper to just have a quick look at this particular story, in regards to the ambulance that was recorded by some youth who were said to have gotten the ambulance from one of the parents of those young people. But here he talks about how carefree teens and young adults are emerging as one of the weakest links in slowing down the spread of coronavirus in Kenya. As they continue to act irresponsibly, they are still throwing parties and organizing social events. And currently, out of the 270 that have been confirmed, about 30% of all infections comprise those who are below the age of 29 years old, while 92% are below 59, bringing a new headache to parents who are worried about their children. So defiant young Kenyans are the ones who are said to be unafraid of this pandemic, and they are still moving on with life as usual. And of course, this story this past weekend has really sparked the conversation about what we as a people are doing to try and fight the spread of COVID-19. But still in line to that story, when it comes to the defiance of the Kenyan people, the previous pages here, page 4 and 5, talk of how the rules are simple and for our own good, but many Kenyans are turning a deaf ear. And looking at that, this is a series that the Daily Nation has now embarked on to just sort of mulika those who are not following the simple guidelines that have been put by the ministry when it comes to social distancing, wearing of masks, staying indoors when you have to. And pictured on these 2 pages, you can clearly see that boda rider over there. There was a directive that was given that all boda riders should carry only 1 passenger, but pictured there we have 4 people on that boda, including the driver, and one of them actually has a broken limb. If you look closely, the guy who's seated at the far back of that boda, his leg is actually broken. He has a cast on. going down, there's a lady there just, braiding another lady's hair, no masks. They're not wearing any masks. We can still see some few people there in what may look like a local joint. Others continuing about with their stories over there, selling masks but not wearing masks. And on the other page, there's one guy called Dennis Omondi, who is resident of Kwa Owino Oro slums in Jomvu, where he's wearing a mask that has been made out of arrowroot leaves. He claimed that he cannot afford to buy the proper face mask because of the steep prices, so he resorted to that, a face mask made out of an arrowroot leaf, because he cannot afford. And of course, there next to him, we have children just playing about in water that does not seem so clean. And of course, there was a directive that was given about, how we are allowing children to go about. If you are found out with your child, or if your child is found loitering, you could be arrested. But now, before we get to move on to the other dailies, here is what coronavirus does to the body. For those who might not be really sure about how COVID-19 interacts with your body, and we are taking these rules and guidelines that we are being given lightly, just to highlight a few key organs that it affects here on the body. When it comes to the brain, some of the COVID-19 patients have exhibited signs and symptoms, and consequently have had strokes, seizures, mental confusion, and brain inflammation. When it comes to the eyes, there's also inflammation of the eye membrane. The nose, some lose their sense of smell. When it comes to the heart, it can lead to infections that promote blood clots and consequently heart attack and cardiac inflammation. Intestines, it affects the lower gastrointestinal tract, and about 20% of the patients have reported cases of diarrhea. When it comes to kidney, it damages the kidney and in severe cases makes death more likely. When it comes to the liver, they have indicated enzyme levels that signal a struggling liver, and a cross-section of the lungs show that immune cells are crowding an inflamed alveolus, which consequently may lead to diminishing oxygen uptake of the lungs. So as you can see, this COVID-19 doesn't just affect your respiratory tract, it spills over to your eyes, your brain, and many other organs of your body. So let's just try and follow these simple guidelines that we're being given when it comes to helping curb the spread of COVID-19. Ray.
Now, on the front page of the Star this morning, definitely it's all, as you've guessed, the COVID-19 issue. And just to top up to what Jane had earlier alluded to, is that following that particular story that took the country by storm, especially on social media, of those youngsters who recorded themselves while they were in that particular ambulance. I'm sure you've come across it. Yesterday, it was trending on Twitter at a number 3 or 4, hashtag ambulance. It's not trending right now, but the emergency service provider has issued a statement in regard to that and says, and I quote, that they encourage the authorities to follow up on this and ensure that these people are reprimanded, or other action is taken on them. Remember, the issue of curfew is something that has been emphasized, especially by government, as one of the precautionary measures to ease the spread of the deadly pandemic. So they're going to be tried, and investigations are still ongoing. Unconfirmed reports is that one of the directors who had given that order has since been reprimanded by the organization and might be stepping down, but we'll clarify that in the subsequent bulletins that follows. So this morning on the Star, that's how it looks like. On the Star this morning, that's what we have. We have the stories of brave medics keeping COVID-19 at bay, and says HIV and COVID-19, what you need to know. The risk for people with HIV is greatest in a low CD4 cell count, and not on HIV treatment, that is antiretroviral therapy or ART. The details of that particular story taking us all the way to page 4. And top there, before we talk about the issue of HIV and COVID-19, and just to look at the frontline caregivers, that is those who are working in the medical field. There's a story there, quite touching, is that ruthless police, man tells of wife and baby's death in curfew ordeal. Now, crossing over to page 3 there, we start off with that story where the pair allegedly died during delivery after a pregnant woman stayed home till morning. The man narrates how wife and baby died in curfew ordeal. He said he had waited for 9 months to add one more to his family, but the coronavirus and curfew came and he lost 2. Mati Nyamai's wife, Vidya Nduko, was 9 months pregnant as of March 29th and was due for delivery any time. She was to add the 7th child to their family, and the expectation was palpable. But 2 days earlier, the dusk to dawn curfew had swung into effect and the police had zealously enforced it, patrolling even deep into the village. Now, on the night of March 30th, the labor pain started at around 9 p.m. and without any contact for emergency ambulance, he opted for a border operator, but they declined, fearing the clobbering by police. Now, it was the birth, water and blood that came first by around midnight, and bleeding would persist and increase in intensity. By morning, she was in a pool of blood with no energy. Yamai found means to rush her to Kibwezi Sub-County Healthcare, and at the hospital, Nduko got rushed to the theatre. Through surgical means, the doctor succeeded in delivering the child, but it was dead. That's the harrowing story of a man who lost his wife and a child during this curfew. And he says if it wasn't the fear, details there, if it wasn't the fear that the cops and just people who are looking up into that issue. Well, that's just one of the stories. The Kenyans continue sharing their experiences, and as far as the coffee is concerned, remember this is one of just of the ways that the government is trying to enforce the curfew. Is one of the measures taken, precautionary measures to ease the spread of the pandemic that has so far claimed over several millions across the globe, with Kenya having had 270 confirmed cases currently.
Now let's head over to the Standard newspaper and get to see what is on the front page. And this is in regards to matters to do with the politics on the Standard newspaper. And on the front page, the splash there is the fixers, schemers or trumpets. That is a question. Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe and Kotu boss Francis Atwoli have become the bearers of blunt political messages since the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga, and their predictions are coming to pass. These are two individuals who have given or made serious predictions in the past. They have come to pass. As we speak, we have had debates in regards to what they say. And just to give us a glimpse of this story is why Murathe and Atwoli are new lords of politics. Jubilee Vice Chairman and Kotu boss have come out as poster boys in the anti-Ruto campaign that's gaining traction within and outside the ruling party. They are not elected, but speak unconfirmed truths that come to pass to the congregation of the DP and critics of Uhuru and Raila. Pictured in there, we have images of the two, Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe and Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli. And there is a quote given there by the Kotu boss saying, "I predicted that Uhuru will be here beyond 2022. And trust me, he is going nowhere. He will be here, not as a president, but in a different role. I am close to Raila and Gideon, but like Uhuru, Raila and Gideon mean well for this country." This is the story on the two, why Murathe and Atwoli are new lords of politics. That is in regards to what is happening. Back to the front page of the Standard newspaper, we have at the top there an inside story of Keroche breweries. Remember, this has been the talk of town. They have been hitting the headlines so frequently. KRA long-running 9 billion shilling tax battle is a face-off. Court proceedings lift the lead on Naivasha-based brewers' fight for survival, plus the taxman's shock admission. That is inside story of Keroche breweries. Just to get a glimpse of that on that story. We have how KRA's error and backdating of tax led to tussle with brewer. It is one of the longest running tax disputes in the country. Remember that. That is a fact to note. It is one of the longest running tax disputes in the country. Documents filed in court by Keroche revealed a grim picture of the dark tax world, unjustified demands, discrimination, and a push that can be equated to a selfish entity playing victim of their own mistakes. And also there, how Keroche's error and backdating of tax led to tussle with the brewer. We have also a story on Keroche claims tax row linked to bid to kill local companies. Enterprise has contested 9 billion shilling demand from KRA. Karanja is not willing to let go and accuses multinationals, feeling threatened that their dominance is being challenged. And there is a quote by Peter Kiguru, that is a software company MD. He says, "You cannot kill the duck that gives you the golden egg by criminalizing tax. How could you get the golden egg in future if the duck is not there?" We are not disputing paying tax since it is our obligation, but it should not be used to kill our industries. Keroche claims tax row linked to bid to kill companies, but also below there, on the same story on Keroche and KRA, there is KRA insists on collecting 9 billion shilling from Keroche on tax dispute as the tax dispute escalates. We have the taxman, that is KRA, that wants the High Court to lift orders barring it from demanding the 9.1 billion shillings in taxes from Keroche breweries. Get read about this story on KRA on how they insist on collecting the 9 billion shilling from Keroche. What will happen next? On the issue of backdating tax and reclassifying the tax tariffs from Vienna fortified wine that is happening currently, KRA argued that it is justified to demand the additional tax. Yeah, are they? Is this the case? Get read about that on Matters Politics and KRA versus Keroche.
All right, now coming back to the front page of the Daily Nation, a story that has been highlighted in brief there. It talks of French patients sent home amid testing standoff. Now, this story does continue inside the Daily Nation, but here in brief, it talks about how row broke out after the health ministry identified 9 French nationals who were suspected of having the virus. Now, let's get to have a quick look at what more of that story talks about here. Let me get kunje hii gazeti vizuri. Usipokunja gazeti ukisoma, you haven't really read it. Now, looking at the top of that page right there, France evacuates nationals amid row. Now here, Kenya has accused France of violating lockdown measures as it flies out 9 of its infected nationals. And this was done just recently, where France, actually just last night, where France last night evacuated 9 of its nationals who tested positive for COVID-19 in Nairobi as it emerged that foreign mission could be turning into incubation areas for the deadly virus. Now, this evacuation has caused a row between the French and Kenyan health authorities, who accuse the French embassy of frustrating lockdown measures here in Kenya, which is supposed to be in line with the Vienna Convention, which must conform with the Vienna Convention. Now, out of these 9 French nationals, there is a diplomat that has been included there, and it is said that the French authorities refuse to have samples taken, but it is the handling of these patients that has put the French embassy in a collision course with Nairobi after it emerged that it is not observing local health regulation and therefore endangering the staff at not only the French embassy but the population as a whole. But since then, the French embassy spokesperson rather says that the French embassy respects the directives regarding coronavirus and has no comment about these allegations so far. So more of that has been highlighted there. You can read more of it to understand what this row is that has been brought about by the 9 French nationals that were evacuated yesterday, which is said to be in contradiction to observing the lockdown rules that have been put in place here in Kenya, which are supposed to conform to the Vienna Convention.
Now coming back to the Star and now focusing a little bit on COVID-19 and also the issue of legislation here. And just from the front page of the Star this morning, we took a poll. Remember, there was a poll that InfoTrack had carried out, and it states, or rather there's a link there. There's a link there and just some overview of what that particular survey had to say from Kenyans. Basically, is that MPs have failed the virus test, Kenyans say in poll. Now, Kenyans believe that MPs are failing the war against the spread of coronavirus in the country, and new study shows. The opinion poll by InfoTrack reveals most Kenyans are not happy with their MPs' intervention and voted them last among key stakeholders at the forefront of dealing with COVID-19. Well, we don't know if those are your views. Remember, we are live, and we encourage your feedback on our SMS line is 2154, as well as our Twitter handle at KBC Channel 1 TV. So you can give us your feedback. Do you think that this poll is reflective of what Kenyans are feeling in regard to the direction that the legislators have taken, or rather MPs have taken in regard to the virus test there, the interventions that they've put in place? Now, further, according to the poll released yesterday, a paltry 21% of Kenyans think the lawmakers are doing a good job, with the rest holding a contrary opinion. Now, remember, would want to find out exactly if you think that is the poll findings are representative of what Kenyans are saying, or rather what legislators have done or have failed to do. Now, the poll findings are further an indictment of Parliament, which has been on the spot after MPs dismissed calls to slash their salaries to the COVID-19 to go towards the COVID-19 emergency response fund, and instead called on the corporates to donate the fund. Now, still keeping up with matters of legislation is that there's a story here is that Savula wants a state to put off repayment of Chinese loans. You may be asking who Savula is. Well, that is the Lugari MP Ayub Savula has filed a motion in Parliament to compel the government to suspend the payment of Chinese loans. Savula argues that China, Kenya's largest creditor, should help the government address the economic challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, still keeping up with, just briefly looking at, still keeping up with the issue of legislation, is that now the political, or rather the ruling class, has also been reminded. That's the story you can get. That's just a glimpse of what Savula wants, the Lugari MP wants, and what he's proposing is that Kenya suspends its loan repayment to China in light of COVID-19. That's just a glimpse of what has been captured in the Star this morning. You can get further details. But now, still keeping up with what is happening, and as far as legislation is concerned, is that the political class, just to rope into the story that has been highlighted there by the Daily Nation that Ram has mentioned about the issue of push and pull between the political class, is that now there's an article here that says that the ruling class has been reminded that the country is at war against the coronavirus contagion and should rally Kenyans to fight as one instead of politicking. This came from the Kenya Livestock Marketing Council Chairman Duban Ame, who on Saturday said the government should be allowed to deal with the coronavirus pandemic uninterrupted. Ame spoke in Garissa town. He was referring to the wrangling in the ruling Jubilee Party between the Tanga Tanga faction allied to Deputy President William Ruto and Keleweke, which pronounces itself as pro-President Uhuru Kenyatta. Details of this in the dailies this morning, just tying up loose ends in as far as legislation and top stories that we're having, that have been captured in our dailies this morning. So far, that's what we have in the Star in as far as politics is concerned.
All right, now as we bring this segment to a close, just one final story here looking at matters concerning the counties, and this is in regards to the flash floods and the flooding that we have been seeing this past week. And then here it talks of 4 dead and hundreds displaced as floods and mudslides hit villages, and 23 people are still missing by last yesterday evening, even as the injured were rushed to hospitals. At least 4 have been killed. Yes, 23 still missing. This is after the flash floods that hit Chesogon Market and the neighboring villages in West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet border. The 23 who were injured, they were rushed to the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret. But however, there are some 350 families from West Pokot and another 143 from Elgeyo Marakwet who were displaced by the floods, bringing the total to 493 that were displaced by these floods that shook the area throughout this weekend. And of course, the leaders there are saying that, they have outlined plans to handle the situation and try and give some cushioning to the residents who have been affected. Going to Taita Taveta County, over 27 families were left homeless after their houses were destroyed by landslides in Wundanyi sub-county. And this was reported by a Red Cross Society coordinator, that is Joram Oranga, who said 18 houses were completely destroyed, forcing the families to seek shelter elsewhere. In Mombasa, residents in Muroto, which is just close to the Indian Ocean shores, they woke up to flooded houses following a night of heavy rains, and they say their houses were partially submerged by the rising tides, and they are currently living in fear. So this is the situation that is affecting different parts of the country. Of course, with flash floods, mudslides happening across the country, more is being done to try and cushion the residents during this time as we are dealing with this heavy rains that we have been experiencing over the past weekend. Well, with that, that brings us to a close of In the Headlines. We now want to cross on over and continue with the day's discussions. Remember, we welcome you to be part of this conversation using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. My handle is Jane Wamboi. My colleagues at Ray Manyara, at Ramaguko, and at Doreen Arange is how you can find them individually across all social media platforms. And of course, our SMS number is 20154. So right now we want to get into our family check segment. And remember, as I'd mentioned, we continue with our series of discussion in regards to positive parenting. And today we will be looking at parenting and substance use. Do stay with us. All right, let's get into it. Remember, we are talking about parenting and substance use. This is a series of discussions that we started at the beginning of this month, of course, in partnership with NACADA, to just try and see how we can employ positive parenting during this time that we are fighting this COVID-19 crisis. Now, joining me in studio this morning, we have Susan Maua, who is the acting manager in charge of public education and advocacy, working with NACADA. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about parenting and substance use amid COVID-19 and just trying to demystify some of the myths and excuses that we give as parents.
Oh, yeah.
But let me just start with one thing that I came across yesterday. There has been a noted increase in the purchase of alcohol during this time. And looking at a place like the States, it has increased by 55% since March only. Why do you think this is so? Because this is now the adults who are said to be stockpiling.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, use of alcohol is actually a coping strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it means that you, in your bank of coping mechanisms, you don't have enough. So you always think of something else that can make you get lost.
To reinforce?
Yeah.
Your coping mechanisms.
You know, when you are intoxicated, it means you are a little bit out of touch. Yeah. So if the issue was your wife, you can forget that she exists until you sober up and you find she's still there.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is why use of alcohol is not a very good coping mechanism, but that is actually what happens, because you look at the stressors.
Yeah.
The stressors that are there, like now, being stuck in the house, maybe you don't have much to do, or your children are there, you've not been talking to them previously, your spouse is also there, you have actually been existing in the house, then suddenly you find yourselves. So you see, those are stressors. and that brings out negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So when you add the stressors and the negative emotions, then you bring in alcohol, which unfortunately is a depressant,
Yes.
to depress you further.
Thinking it's going to help you deal
Yes,
with it.
yeah.
But then also this phenomenon of, this stockpiling of alcohol has also been termed as a perfect storm for abuse, for drug and alcohol abuse, especially for our children.
Yeah.
Do you think this is so because we are providing them with all these options that we think are good for us as adults, but actually is an opportunity for abuse when it comes to our children?
Oh yeah, it is, because remember that you're talking of children, a young person, a growing brain, one that does not have a lot of coping mechanisms.
Yes.
So now if you're showing that this is one of the ways that you can, then you're actually slowly destroying. And that is why you see eventually we now talk of addiction. Because you see, the more you use, you develop tolerance, and over time you find yourself in a totally different environment where if you wake up, you must use it. Yeah, and it is something that happens progressively. So you see, as you're stockpiling, what you are actually demonstrating to the children, this is how it's done. Yeah.
All right. And that actually just brings me to now the next part of this conversation. Trying to understand what are those reasons that, push our children and young adults into indulging in alcohol and drugs, and especially now that they are at home. And the biggest one is, when the parents are indulging. Now, this sort of reinforces their ideas and, their beliefs about alcohol. Tell us a bit about that.
That's why we're actually having this conversation, because remember, all these things are based on the NACADA research that we did.
Yeah.
And it shows that children begin to use because of the adults in their lives. It is their parents, it is their brothers, their sisters, it is those parties you have at home. It is all those things that you do that actually makes children see this is actually what should be done. I would also want to do the same. So that is one reason. Now, the other thing is, particularly when you talk about teenagers, teenagers, it's actually a transition point of crossing from childhood into adulthood. There are a lot of things that are happening in your body as a young person. So it means that even your curiosity level is up.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and particularly if your parent is going to be talking about don't, then I'm going to do the opposite. I said, okay, well, why are they saying this? Let me find out.
Okay.
That is why you need to give reasons rather than saying, because I said so. Yeah.
Again, that blanket statement, because I said so because I'm the parent, could also be more destructive than useful as we might think as parents.
Yes, yeah.
So curiosity is also another reason as to why our children tend to indulge.
Curiosity, and then again peer pressure, because they are likely to do what others are doing. And the interesting thing is young people have a tendency of thinking everybody is using. Yeah. So because you want to be everybody,
they want to be left behind.
They don't want to be left behind. But as they're saying everybody is using, then ask them, name those who are using. Then you find they can't even get to 5.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's more of a perception like, I want to be like everybody. Everybody is using, so let me also use.
Let me jump on that bandwagon.
So peer pressure
is also
becomes
another big problem. Now, looking at this situation that our children were just plucked out of school and thrown at home, so many of them did not, or rather still don't have a schedule as to how, their day is structured. So you find they get bored so much. Do you think this idleness and this sense of boredom could also be contributing to them wanting to indulge in alcohol and other substances? Yeah,
idleness is also one of the things. And unfortunately, we have got our children to only think academic. Yeah. So they are not able to develop the skills, actually the life skills that they require, including how do you use your free time? Because you see, in the school environment, all the time is used. Like high schoolers, I don't know about primary, but high schoolers, probably they have to wake up at 4 a.m.,
morning
and run,
preps.
morning preps, and run through until 10 p.m.
Yes.
That is exhausting. So basically, it means that this child never has any time, including games time, PE. Physical education, you're supposed to go and jump around. Now, if that doesn't happen, then it means that this person never learns how to use free time. When they get home, the schools also send them with homework. Then the parents, if that is not the case, then they would want to get them into tuition, or they would want to take them to some camp organized by the church, or many other things. So this person never gets to learn, how do I use free time?
To manage their free time.
And that's a skill. That's a skill that you need to learn so that, you know, without the gadgets, of course. Yeah, because free time does not mean engaging with the gadgets. Yeah, so how do they learn to just use the free time?
And use it constructively for that matter.
And that is how they are going to learn that this is constructive way of doing it and so on. So that even on their own, they can sit down and say, I think I need to create some time to do my maths. I need to create some time to do some drawing. Oh, what else would I want to do? Oh, I will just sleep. You know, I walk around or engage in some kind of sport and so on.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, also we have seen so many parents having to, you know, being forced to take leaves or having to work from home. And consequently, when they're still working from home, there's very minimal parental supervision that is involved with the children.
Yeah.
Could this also be a predisposing factor to children wanting to experiment and, you know, indulge in alcohol and other drugs?
Yeah, because remember, other than just the supervision, like I said, we have been existing in this house.
Yes.
Yeah. We barely talk to each other. Maybe in the morning, everybody take your breakfast, rush to school, hi, and then in the evening, you probably as a parent, you're going to evening class, especially in the cities. So now you actually do not have time. Now, when it comes to supervision now, you know, when you finally find yourself together, so what do we do? Because supervision is not sitting together.
Yes.
That is not supervision. It's more of, you know, checking with the person, but also giving them space to be able to do those things. So parental supervision is also another thing. And you know, if you've not been doing it before, you're not going to start doing it now.
It's not something you just jumpstart and get onto.
Yes,
it's something you build progressively.
And that's why the child, you know, if you've not been talking to them before teenage, and then suddenly you find that you want to talk about, what do you even start talking about? And that's why many times people ask us as NACADA, so how do I begin to talk to my child about drugs? You have not been holding a conversation before, so how do you just, you know, out of the blues, how do you begin to talk about that? You're likely to shout, you're likely to say all the things that you're going to regret.
And they always say, don't just be a parent to your child, be a friend to your child as well. And that way you're able to foster that freeness with your child so that when they get to that teen phase, when they're said to be rebellious, it's easier to navigate those waters as parents.
Yeah.
Now, let's come back to this, you know, some of these causes, and let's talk a bit about, you know, popular media. Children have so much access to TV and the internet right now that they are at home. How is this impacting them when it comes to their relationship with alcohol and drug use?
You know, right now, if you look at the kind of media that you have, like now if you go to Twitter, you will find there are all these adverts that are there.
Yes.
So it means that I can click and I can find, you know, more information. I can do purchases because there's no way of checking my age and so on. Go to Facebook, you're going to find the same. Now let's come to the basics that you see on your screen that comes in the form of cartoons. You know, as a parent, if your child is hooked to a given cartoon, you need to you know, just go through it and see what is this cartoon about. I was actually shocked one time when my children are older, so I no longer check on those, but I was actually surprised that some of the cartoons, we'll even be talking about, you know, today they have characters of lesbians and gays and so on. Yeah. So you see, there are a lot of things that are coming in that you don't know. Now look at our music. Yeah. Music. You will find that in the music videos, there's always alcohol as part of the music, or there is smoking. Yes, there is smoking of cannabis. There could even be smoking of cigarettes. Remember, we don't advertise tobacco anymore, but it will come in the form of the music.
Yeah.
So you see then, if this is entertainment and at the same time it is demonstrating this is how we entertain ourselves. Yes.
So popular media does have a very big role, especially now that we are letting our children just indulge and indulge and indulge. And, you know, arguably so as parents, you know, you don't have time, especially if you have a number of children, you find it hard to just sort of keep it up with them. So you tend to just throw a gadget at them.
You know, we don't have as many children. Think of our parents. How many did they have? 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes.
And they were managing all of you. But today we just have one child, 2 children, at most 5. Yeah. Actually, on average, it's between 2 to 5. 2 to 5. That is where you're going to find. Yes, most parents. So it means, and that is why when we talk of quality time, which is 10 minutes per child, you can actually afford, if you had 5 and you had quality time, which is 10 minutes per child, that is 50 minutes of your time.
So we just overthink the situation.
Yes, yeah. So it's really within our scope, and that is why we are having this conversation. Because if we are going to prevent drug use, then we must start from where it all starts, and that has to do with the parents.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to move on to the next phase of this discussion, let's talk a bit about how increased stress is also leading our children to indulge in alcohol and other drugs. And, as parents, we tend to think our children are not stressed. They have food, they have clothes, they have gadgets, they have shelter, they can go to school when schools will be allowed to reopen. But when it comes to this increased stress on our children, as parents, we tend to overlook.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that and how it's contributing to their redirecting to alcohol.
It's interesting to hear 2-year-old say, "I'm stressed." Yes.
You wonder.
and that is because a lot of us talk about stress. Yeah? Sometimes you tell the children, "Oh, you are stressing me." And they don't even understand what this stress is. Stress must be when you are talking to somebody. Yes. You want them to hear something and they do not want, oh, that must be stress. Yeah. So children also go through stress. Yeah. Because let's talk about the high school person. When they get to Form 1, they are so excited. Yeah. And as they get excited, there are new subjects that you're going to learn. You're in a new school, term 1 is where you score 90s and 80s and so on. But as you move on progressively, yeah. First of all, the fact that you need to wake up so early and you have to, stretch from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., that is already so much. Every teacher who comes to class gives work. Yeah. Now as they come home, they actually need a rest. Yeah. So that's why, for me, I'm glad that, Dr. Matiang'i actually made it possible that school breaks are there.
Yes.
And when they go for holidays, they actually need time to
relax.
You just need time to get off it. Yeah. Because when they come back, if they have time to just do more than just academic. Academic work is very stressful because the parent expects so much from you.
Absolutely.
The teachers expect so much from you. That in itself is very stressing. And then you add to yourself as a growing person. As you transit from childhood into preteen, into teens, there are hormones, there is pressure. There is pressure from trying to meet the expectations of your peers, the sense of belonging, you want to do. So all these things are happening at the same time. The media is also showing you something else. Yeah. So the need to want to belong then becomes so much. So then you put all these things together because each one of them has expectations, and again, you also want to remember we talked about the issues of esteem. If esteem is low, you always feel like, no, they will not even like me. Yeah, I would want to be like them. So if they are drinking, then I would also want to drink so that I am like them, so that they don't look at me and think that, I'm a sissy or something like that. Yeah.
So as parents, we need to stop presuming that our children are not stressed.
Yeah, they are.
And especially when they come to talk to us, let us take time and listen to them.
That is why we must create time to actually listen. This quality time is not where you ramble on as a parent. It is time you are getting into the space of the child. Let them just tell you about what they are going through. They could even be going through bullying, because bullying is also something that is real, even in our own context. So how do they, when they get into this point where they see a girl or a boy that they like, that also becomes another stressor. How do they deal with this? But now, if as a parent you did not even open these channels, who do they talk to?
Becomes a problem.
Yeah, it becomes a challenge.
We are talking about positive parenting and how we can take advantage of this time to make the most of this time with our children, build on those relationships and reinforce them. And today we are particularly focusing on the relationship between, alcohol and drug use and our children amid this crisis that we are in. Now, I want us to now move on to the next phase of this discussion and just try to understand some of these excuses that we give as parents when it comes to our children interacting with alcohol and drug use. And the biggest one that most parents always go with is in regards to faith. Mtoto wangu hajui mambo ya pombe, haja interact nayo, so they cannot use. We presume that because we are, faith-based family, our children haven't interacted with these things. How is this detrimental to our children?
Then what happens is you use religion now like a carpet.
Yes.
Yeah. Because whose faith are you talking about? We as a family, we are Christians. So does that make your children Christian? Do they believe in the same things that you're talking about? How about the fact that even the church, for example, is using wine? The church is also using wine for communion.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes when we do the surveys, you ask, when was the first time you ever used alcohol? It is
church.
It is church. When they actually went for Holy Communion and so on. Yeah. So just hiding under religion and not addressing the issues. Because remember, your child does not just interact inside your house. And then even if you're religious, why don't you use that same Bible, for example? Because the Quran must also be having. But why don't you just use that same faith? Because even the Bible says, train up a child
in the way they should grow.
In the way that they should, so that when
they're old, they don't depart from it.
Yes, they do not depart from it. You see, that means that even the Bible is telling you, don't just take it for granted. Just because I am a Christian, then things will just happen. Things will just happen. You must hold that conversation. You must make a conscious effort to train the child in the way that you want them to go. That even when the peer pressure will come in and so on, yes, they will get attracted to their peers and so on, but they will always remember
at the back of their minds,
my mother, my father does not approve of this. Yeah. So you see, you have already put something in their heads.
Yes.
Yeah. But when you leave it,
you are preparing yourself for more problems in future.
Yeah.
So don't just use a blanket cover just because you may be religious. Remember, your child does not spend the entire time with you. They have other environments where they interact with other people, and those could expose them to this alcohol and drugs. Now, another excuse that most parents use is that it is normal for children to experiment.
Oh yes, it is normal for children.
Let them experiment with alcohol and other drugs.
It's normal for children to experiment. Yes. So then, if yours is experimenting, then
it's fine.
Then it is fine. That is not fine. That is not fine because the truth of the matter is so many of them are not using and have never even experimented. Yes, and you see, it is that use that progresses into abuse and can eventually become an addiction. Yeah. So it is not true that children are experimenting. If you experimented as somebody who was growing up, that does not mean that
it's the same case for your children.
It is the same case because probably in that environment that you were compared it to today's environment is totally different because probably when you're growing up you did not have all these pressures that is coming in form of media, in form of your peers, in form of your parents, there's so many things around you that are happening.
All right.
If you let your child do that, then they are going to get into much more trouble.
So do not presume that, since you experimented, your child might also want to do the same.
You are not even going to tell them that you experimented. Because if you do, remember we said children will do what their parents do.
Yeah.
You know, it is monkey see, monkey do. So if you're going to say, oh, you know, I also experimented, I say, if daddy did, then it's just
fine.
yes, yeah. You know, this is just part of growing up.
All right.
So they're also likely to do that.
To go the same down the same road. Now, when it comes to parents who have, children who are in the preteen and the teen phase, most of them always say that, oh, my children are rebellious, they don't listen to me, they don't care what I say. So even if I tell them about drug and alcohol, they'll not listen to me. And we use this as an excuse as parents to avoid this conversation. Is this doing more harm than good to our children?
It is because, interestingly, research has actually shown that children, if you ask them who they would want to get that information from, it's actually the parents. Yes. So it is the parents, whether you're talking about things on sexuality, you're talking about, let's just say, risky behavior, including alcohol and drug use. It is actually the parents they would want to hear from. And remember that they may look like they are not listening to you because, you know, they will roll their eyes, they will say, oh, no, because
body language.
Probably you give a lot of instructions and counter instructions.
Yeah.
That when you call them, they say, oh, no, here she is again. Yeah. So as they do that, it doesn't mean that they are not listening to you. You can actually ask them, so what have I said? And they will tell you one by one what you have actually said. Yeah. Because remember that you matter. You matter to your children so much that whether you approve or disapprove something is so important to them. And that is why they would want to hear it from you. If they don't hear it from you, then they are going to hear it from third parties who don't care.
Yes.
Yes. People who don't care about them are the ones who are going to tell them.
And that will lead to more damage.
Yes. So by the time you realize something, then it has gone so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cannot be reversed.
Probably they have even committed suicide. And then you realize, oh, you know, these are some of the things that have been happening.
All right.
Yeah.
So as a parent, always try to be the reference point for your child when it comes to these pivotal conversations in our children's lives. Now, before we get to wind this conversation down, we always talk, you know, as parents, you know, it's what we started with this conversation, the fact that, you know, parents are stockpiling during this time and, you know, they're thinking, okay, ini yangu, ini soda ya wazee, na ini soda ya watoto. You even have categories in the fridge. So as a parent, we tend to say, okay, yeah, I'm an adult, I can use, and you tell your child when you grow up, that's when you will use. But showing them that, you know, since I'm an adult, I can use alcohol and other drugs, and, you know, since you're a child, you cannot use. How is this impacting rather children when it comes to their interaction with alcohol and drug use?
Remember that when you talk of communication, it's more of what you do rather than what you say.
Okay.
Yeah. 25% may be verbal. 75% it is non-verbal. So what are you demonstrating? By having it there, by taking it in their presence, you're actually demonstrating that it is okay to do this. Yeah. So remember, we've already said that you matter to your children. So whatever you do, they are going to do exactly that. And remember, they are not able to conceptualize that this is for adults. So they are going to be thinking, oh, when I get to 18. Sometimes when you hear children say, oh, when I grow up, I would like to be like my dad. Yeah. Probably you would want to ask them, what exactly about your dad would you want to be like? Yeah. Probably he sits there and reads the newspaper and does nothing when he comes to the house. Or when he's there, you know, there are all these things. You would want to find out what else. Yeah. Because also tied to that are parents who think, oh, you know, I can actually teach them to drink responsibly.
Yes, and that brings me to the next point in regards to some of the excuses that we use as parents. You know, I don't want to be too strict with my child. I want to be the cool parent. I want to be the point of reference. So I want to be the person who will introduce them to this alcohol world because I know at some point they will get into it. So let me just introduce them to it to try and control the situation. Nimbaye kamoja, we go drink with them. Is this advisable, especially for our teens and youth?
It is. It's not advisable because, one, this is a growing brain.
Yeah.
In the previous sessions, we talked about this brain continues to grow until the age of 25. Yeah. The last part of the brain that grows is the part responsible for executive functions, you know, higher decision making and so on. So that means that they have already not reached that stage of doing that. Yeah. And if you are going to provide the alcohol and even a place to drink it, the children then become more comfortable with it. Yeah, comfortable with it, that they will still get to that level of binge drinking and so on. So it means that even when you are not there, yeah, they can easily bring their friends and really go overboard. And you have heard of situations where children do that. You know, we've just had cases of children using an ambulance and so on.
I know.
Yes, yeah. So what happened? First of all, they are teenagers.
Yeah.
Are they working?
No.
They are not working. So it means that somebody gave them money. Who gave them the money? Most likely the parent. Yeah. If you are going to teach about rules, we've talked about this before. If you're going to talk about those rules, did you also remind them about curfew? Probably not. Did you talk about the fact that, first of all, you have already endorsed drinking? In fact, that is a typical example of what we are talking about. You have already endorsed drinking. But look at their lack of responsibility in it. That is why they are inside the ambulance. They can even take a selfie and post it, you know. Already the lack of the skills are there. And as a parent, you have endorsed. Because how did they even get into the ambulance? You know, as a parent, if as the story goes,
you made it available.
You made it available. You know, you actually broke the rules, called the ambulance to go and pick a patient who happens to be your child, and you know very well that this child is not, it's not a patient. And then they come with your friends and they just blow you up, you know, by putting it on social media for everybody to see and show how, as a parent. That's why we were talking about parenting styles.
And exactly, as we bring this conversation to a close, what does that say about, you know, the parenting styles that we are employing? Because as we had said, you know, it doesn't always have to be one way of parenting. It's a matter of borrowing from different styles to try and bring out the best in your child. Maybe as we close the conversation, you can just re-emphasize on the whole importance of parenting styles in this day and time.
The fact that you need to provide your child with routines and also know that there are consequences to what you do.
Yes.
Because if you never get them to learn about consequences, then you end up with children who are growing up with a sense of entitlement. Yeah, I can do this and my parent will get me out of it. Remember when we talked about, as a child you are the boss. So you decide what then happens.
Permissive, being too permissive.
That is being too permissive, and it's going to destroy your child. Because if they progress like that, it means they fail to get the skills. And as they do that, then they're not going to become better adults. Yeah. And if they manage to finish school and so on, then it means even the workplace is going to have a bigger problem. So that is why it is very important that you actually talk to your children and let them know. And as they grow from one stage to another, you know, like I think in the next one we'll talk about how do you hold these conversations.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't wait until they get into teenage. It's something that you start early and you do that progressively.
All right.
And maybe as parents are home now, they could do a little experiment and ask their children, what kind of parent am I?
The answers you will get.
Just get feedback from them, and then that probably will help you to see where do I need to improve as a parent.
Could be getting eye-opening responses from our children. So once again, as parents, do not be too permissive, do not be too strict, do not be too authoritarian. Just try and find a balance so that you don't set your child up for failure much later in the future when they are in a place where you are not involved to bail them out. All right. So look at some of these parenting styles, see how you can best employ. And remember, this starts by analyzing yourself as a parent and understanding which style of parenting you employ the most, and see how you can borrow from these other different styles to ultimately even help yourself have these conversations with your child about alcohol and all these other substances that are very readily available, especially now with dialer delivery. You might not even know when they're being delivered. So open that channel of communication as a parent and ultimately arrest the situation before it's too late. We have been speaking with Susan Maua, who is the acting manager in charge of public education and advocacy working with NACADA. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you this morning. Now remember, we continue with this series of discussion next week, where we'll be looking at those conversations with your children. So do keep it here to catch up with all that and so much more. But for now, we take a quick breather. Mr. Director, are we taking a break? Ama tunaenda tukiendanga? All right, we take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of Good Morning Kenya. Do stay with us. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya.
What has been your greatest challenge as a parent during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic situation? As we wait for the pandemic to be over at home, COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to reconnect with our children. Join NACADA during Good Morning Kenya Breakfast Show as we discuss positive parenting. Remember, parenting is all about you. NACADA, for a nation free from alcohol and drug abuse.
Next on Corner.
I didn't find the money to gain anything. I found her because she's a child.
I'll tell you this. He has something that rubs me the wrong way.
Walter.
It doesn't hurt having an Oyange in our corner. But be careful of Pamela. She's barely a kid. Don't be fooled.
Mbona unakuwaga na interest sana na hiyo gym? Na vile wewe ni sonko.
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
Why can't the child just be born already? I'm so sick and tired of being cooped up within these four walls.
Not gonna wait any longer, Julia. The moment has arrived for you to transfer the old woman's fortune to me. It's time for me to have my inheritance.
What's going on? Miss, what were you going to tell her?
I told you that I'm not going with him. Please, just call a taxi.
Elena.
KBC, in collaboration with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, is broadcasting enhanced out-of-class learning on radio, television, and online. Catch the lessons every weekday on KBC Channel 1 from 2 to 4 p.m., on KBC English Service and 15 FM from 9:15 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Radio Taifa from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. KBC English Service, Radio Taifa, and 15 FM are also available countrywide on the free-to-air Signet digital TV platform, or log on to www.kbc.co.ke for live streaming, or download the KBC Online app on Google Play Store. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, ensuring learning no matter what.
Many thanks for staying with us. We continue with the day's discussion, and now we want to talk about the effects of coronavirus to the church ministry. So how exactly are faithfuls being affected during this difficult time? Pastor Irene Kimathi will be helping us understand more about this specific discussion. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this morning, Pastor.
Thank you.
All right, so we start from the fact that a church is to serve as an example. So do you think that churches are called to set an example, especially of responsible adherence to public policies, in essence, like the directives that governments give, the directives that you're given by different bodies? Is church supposed to set an example for people to know how best to follow these directives?
Exactly.
How so?
We are supposed as a church to make moral values of people be values that follow God. And in following God, we have also to obey the authorities. And therefore, as a church, we are really pressing on so that people can really obey. Another thing, this is for our benefit. We want our congregants to be safe. And we want them also to go out there and speak and teach those that don't go to church. So even before we closed church, we had people coming from the Ministry of Health, speaking to them, teaching them how they should keep their distance, washing their hands, and all those things. And even now we are pressing on, teaching them on how to obey, follow the instructions. Yep.
All right, Pastor Irene, there's this issue of, especially those faithfuls that believe, I have to be physically in a church for me to actually feel like I'm getting that spiritual nourishment, for me to see the pastor the way I'm seeing you like this when you're talking to me or when you're preaching. I have to be physically there for me to actually feel I'm in church. But right now, public gatherings have been banned and people are not expected to go to church. So that ultimately means that you cannot be physically in a church. What do you have to say for such faithfuls who believe that they just have to be there? Otherwise, it's not church for me.
Okay, it's really difficult because church is fellowship. And the Bible says that wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in the name of the Lord, He is right there. So there's something about the church. The church is not a normal gathering like any other gathering. It's a place where people meet and God is there. And God services people. Even if the pastor is there, the reverend is there, God is using that person just to lead these people to worship God. Like, for example, you cannot sing great worship when you're alone.
Yeah.
But when you're many, you sing it from your heart, you feel the presence. The church is a place that people embrace each other. It's a place you feel the love of other people. It's a place you listen to other people, emulate even their lifestyles, their dressing. It's a place of influence. So it's a real difficult time for the church, even for me as a pastor, because I have a connection with my congregant. Yeah. There are those that are in need, family needs. There are family marital problems. There are others who really need material help. So when they are out there, you're not able to access them physically. There are so many things that you cannot really be able to help them with. For those congregants that are out there, definitely, if they are like me, they are not feeling as if it's church as usual. Even if you preach to them through social media, the TV, there's always that disconnect because there's that personal touch, talking, even the body language. When you speak to somebody, you see how they are taking things. Praying for somebody, yeah? When you look at somebody, you'll know somebody with a problem, you know how to pray. But right now, I'm telling you, it's difficult.
So it's really difficult.
It's
and
really
what
difficult.
You're saying that actually being there physically is very important.
Necessary, very, very important.
All right.
Yeah.
So now, sitting just from where you sit, what as a pastor, basically, what are you doing to help protect your members during this difficult time?
One of the things is really following the instructions the government has given.
Okay.
Because it's only a fool that does not do things that are going to help them.
True.
Yeah? And God expects us to use common sense. So faith does not mean you put common sense down. We follow those rules. I teach them to follow those rules. Now, it's a bit difficult because as a church, we operate on faith. We pray for people, they get healed. And now there's this perception, if you go to church, there's no matter what disease, it cannot be able to kill you. Exactly. So people feel like if I'm going to church, I am safe. Now you have to teach them that there are levels that you like for example, Moses, when there was this plague of snakes, they were biting the children of Israel. Yeah. He had to put up one snake, and if you looked at that snake, you got healed. If you refuse to look at that snake, definitely you'll die. So these are universal things that we've been given, and we are encouraging them to really follow it and really make sure that everybody around them is safe. Yep.
Yeah, and of course people have been asking these questions that, we want like our philanthropists here in Kenya, probably the rich, to at least also come and help protect the poor families, those that have lost jobs. In your church, are you doing the same, especially for those faithful that cannot even afford the basic needs, which is probably food?
Wow, I bless the Lord. Where I come from, it has not reached the level that people have a problem with food. But I want to say this is the time that the church should come out very strongly, because it's really painful to think of somebody who has to go out every day, make money for their food for evening, and now they have to remain in the house.
Yeah.
I want to say that this is the time that the church should mobilize members that are able to be able to put up together resources to be able to help those poor people that are out there. And I really feel for them. And not only the church, I would want to say that this is the time that every leader, we should stop being jealous and start mobilizing resources. Because if this pandemic continues the way it is continuing, I'm telling you, more people would be killed by hunger more than this disease. So I am praying that every church leader, if you're there, you're pastor, you're reverend, you're a church leader, it's time to put our resources together. We would better stop development and all those things and help the needy and the poor at this particular time.
All right. So, Pastor Irene, even as you talk about leaders, probably church leaders, to mobilize resources to see how best they can help probably the needy, do you feel like churches are doing enough in terms of probably helping, in terms of giving government ideas? Do you feel the church is doing enough? And probably if no, what more can they do?
Okay, at such a time, the church is in quite a very funny place.
Okay.
Because the church has reached somewhere that we are not respected. I don't know if that's my idea, but I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
I sit among the pastors.
And you speak from a pastor's point of view.
I speak from a pastor's point of view.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, being a pastor is a high calling. It's a very high calling, because this is one job that you don't negotiate the amount of money you need to be paid. This is the kind of job that you'll be called in the middle of the night to solve problems, people's problems.
And this is all kinds of problems.
You are a psychologist, you're a psychiatrist, you're a counselor, everything. Call it. You're just there for people. You're providing, you're giving food, you're giving money. This is one job. But we have a problem, because as we move on, because of the nature of people and the dynamism of what is happening in the world economy, most pastors now have been diverted to wanting to make money. And because you're siphoning money from people, you divert your attention from helping the needy. You take your attention to getting the money from people. So basically, the public at large, they have taken another look. They watch us from another angle, as if we are just there to siphon people. So you find that the government is not really involving the church as much, which is really skewing our ideas and our thoughts in a direction that does not have too much of God's ideas, because we, as being the priests, we understand what God is saying, and the people on the ground, because we are the ones who sit with them daily. But because of the picture that is out there, then nobody wants to associate with us, because we look like crooks, we look like people who don't know where they are going. The things sometimes that are said by the people that are able to access media are really outrageous, and therefore everybody is like, let's leave those people just there. But I think it's time also the leaders realize that we are on the ground, we understand what is happening. It's good they really involve us more, especially at such a time, because this one, as much as it's a pandemic, it's a spiritual problem. And being a pastor, I know one thing, that everything you see in the physical is affected by the spiritual. Right? Thank God, the president said, we gather together, we repent. But we need more of that. We need guidance. Repentance is not something you do one-off and you expect things happen. It's something you continue doing and hearing the voice of God, the direction of God. That's my take on that.
All right, and you've put it really, really well in that aspect. But you also mentioned something about church. I mean, being a pastor is not a place where you can. It's not actually. If I mention a job that you can negotiate your pay, like how we know about other jobs, it is more of a calling now, and that of course even brings that aspect of monies. And there's this issue that of course even a number of Kenyans have been saying and also asking the question that now, as we don't go to church as it were, because just like you mentioned in the beginning, we don't go to church physically as how we used to go. And now the sermons are being done online. So where does that put this issue of paying offering and tithes? Is it still necessary to continue paying tithes and offering, even given the fact that we're not going to church, as it were?
Basically, giving offerings and tithe is a God's commandment.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a must. You give your offerings and your tithe to show your commitment to God and to say, thank you, God. Were it not for you, I would not have gotten even what I have gotten. Because, you know, you might make money, get sick, you spend all the money.
Yeah.
So it's a way of saying, God, I appreciate. And now you appreciate through the person that is feeding you or somebody that is standing on a position of praying for you. And at such a time when we are using the social media and all that, I know it's a bit difficult for most pastors. But I would want to say this also. I want to say that the one who called us to this work is able to provide for us. And if you're called to this work and you went expecting your members to pay you, then it's a very difficult place for a pastor to be.
So you should not be as expectant.
Yeah, you should be expecting from God.
Okay.
When you read the Bible, there's a guy that is called Elijah, and there was a time that there was a famine, and God commanded ravens to feed him. In such a time, if you've been doing the work of God well, He's well able to be able to feed you. Okay. But if you've been expecting from the congregants, then I'm telling you, there are so many people that are going to sack themselves from being pastors because it will be too difficult. Too difficult.
Too difficult.
Too difficult, I'm telling you.
All right. So, Pastor, even as you talk about the issue of coronavirus and how the church is being affected, again, there's also the question of, we know God heals. We talk of, these deadly diseases, probably HIV, cancer, and oftentimes we'd even see a pastor coming to hospital praying for those with these kinds of diseases, and a number will actually get healed. Now, another question that also Kenyans have been asking online is, why can't pastors help doctors? So in this sense, doctors at least can take care of half of the patients, see how best they can treat them, and then pastors can take care of the other half of the patient and see how best they can heal them. Talk to us about that.
Wow, that's another trick one. Now, God heals.
Okay.
I work in a healing ministry. I've seen God heal so many diseases. But there's one thing. The power to heal does not belong to the pastor. 10 people might come there sick. God heals 5 of them. He does not heal the other 5. You have no explanation why he did not heal the other 5. So healing is about God, and He's the one who chooses who to heal. Now, in such a particular time when this pandemic, it's something that is so contagious, it would be madness. It would be stupidity. You don't have all that you're required to have, and you're going to pray for people. Unless, and if God says it expressly, He has His own ways of doing it to His people. But that does not discount Him as a healer. It does not say that this pandemic is too big for Him. And for your information, because I work in a prayer ministry, I'm an intercessor, and I have been praying about this thing even before it arrived in Kenya. And funny enough, this is not a disease that has been brought by the devil, because I told you everything you see in the physical is spiritual. This is a disease that God has let be.
Has allowed?
He has allowed it.
Okay.
Because if He was not the one, He would have already given wisdom to researchers and all those people that are supposed to get medicine. But this is something that God has allowed, because sometimes when God sees people have gone overboard, they don't regard Him, they don't even care if He's there or not. He does something to cause them to understand that there's a power that is beyond their power. There's a power that is beyond money. There is a power that is beyond intellectualism, the things we think we know. He takes us to that level. And when you look at this disease as per now, we are all equal. Whether you have money, rich, poor, you're very spiritual, you're not spiritual, we are all on the same
level.
He wants to say, okay, guys, look, there's a power that is beyond you. And that's why I said the question about repentance is a debate that this country and all of us should be thinking about so seriously, because this is not something that we say we wish it away, the devil to go. It's about repentance until God says, I have raised my hand, now I have mercy on you, and then this pandemic will just go. Just go.
So actually, ultimately, God still heals.
God heals.
All right.
There's no question about that. He does. He's doing it even today.
All right. So, Pasi, even as we talked about the issue of going online, because that is basically where we are as at now, regardless of the sector in which you are as a person, Which platform have you been using in terms of your church to ensure that your members are still continuing to get this spiritual nourishment, and how has it been so far?
Wow. My church is somehow a rural urban center.
Okay.
And we have several people who don't have smartphones. Yeah. So most of the times we do it through social media. WhatsApp, I give them scriptures. We have a television program on the local television. That's how we are reaching out to them.
All right, and what about those that do not, that just like you mentioned, your church is rural, urban setup. Of course, this also brings the aspect that not probably all might have access to these phones to actually access WhatsApp, and also not all might have access to radios and TVs. So how are those ones catered for?
Now, this is the time we say, when you have freedom and you don't enjoy it, then it's up to you, because let me tell you, my dear, there's a heaven, there's a place called heaven, and there's hell. And that is the essence of the church. The church is preparing people to go to heaven. If they don't obey God, they go to hell. So when we have freedom, people don't want to go to church. They think it's being backward going to church. At such a time, everybody will run with what they kept in their hearts. If they had nothing in their hearts, then God help them.
So that's why now this brings the importance of the aspect that always have something in your heart.
Yeah, keep in your heart. This is not a community thing, it's about your heart.
It's about your heart and about you as an individual. All right, we had a National Prayer Day as a country, and just like we are trying to talk even before we came on air, is that we always run to church in times of difficulties, anytime we have a problem as an individual, as a person. And yes, we had that National Prayer Day. So do you feel, this is not from a pastor's point of view, do you feel like we need to have like another one, or probably two others, where church leaders can come together and lead the country again, lead the country in prayers to see how best we can stop the spread of this disease, even here for us as a country?
Yeah, you know, there's power in multitudes.
Okay.
Because the more people that are praying on one direction, their faith is put together and their cry is heard by God. This is something that should be done continuously, irrespective of denominations. Just looking at Jesus continuously in one accord and one mind. So that's a must. That's a basic at such a time.
It is a basic. Prayer is really necessary, and it's a basic.
It's a basic such a time.
All right. There's also a statement I read from an article, and this was a statement that was said by a pastor, not here in our own country, but this is what he said. Not to gather in one place for worship is an expression of compassion and solidarity. It does not diminish our worship, but embodies our worship in a new way. It doesn't make us to be less of a church, but fully of the church. So the fact that we are not worshiping in gatherings like how we are used to, it does not in any way make us less of a church. In fact, it actually makes us fully the church. What do you make of this statement?
It depends on how you look at it.
Okay.
But basically, I want to say church is fellowship. I'm telling you, if we continue like this, it will not be good news for the church. But another thing, when I look at the end of this issue, you know, in our place where I come from, we say, when a child feeds and the child is full, he tells the father, let's burn the store. So sometimes God will push you to the corner so that you know him. I am looking at a time that after this pandemic, people will run to church. We'll have more people in church
than how we had.
Than before, because they'll have realized, there are things that we can really not do for ourselves. So this thing is a thing we are sitting and watching and just pleading with God. But it cannot be business as usual. It cannot be called church when we are just out there and out there. There are people who don't have that strength. They are struggling to stand. So by the time we finish this pandemic, I don't know if they will be standing. Yeah.
So this pandemic is more of a wake-up call, not just for the church, but even for us as individuals?
As individuals, the leaders of the country. You can imagine you have all the money that you've been making. Yeah. You know, in our country, people just step on others to make a name and to make money. But now you have your money. If this pandemic becomes too much in Kenya, but we are really praying, it will not be too much. Where will you go? You cannot go anywhere. You still stay in Kenya. So it is something that God has brought for all of us to realize life is not about fame. It's not all about money. It's not all about those things we give value to. It's about the value for God and the value for other human beings. Because right now, you are praying that I am not sick. In fact, everybody is praying that everybody around them
is not sick.
So right now we are very concerned about each other. It's a wake-up call. It's a time that God wants to teach us to care about humanity because God loves humanity.
All right. So even as you talked about that, all of us are praying for this pandemic to actually come to an end, for us to go back to life as normal as how we were used to it. And we are optimistic that it will come to an end. But what if it extends to maybe longer than how we anticipated? What is the church planning to do?
I want to tell you that this thing took everybody
by surprise. And
it's right now that people should go back and sit back and think on what they are going to do if this pandemic extends. By the grace of God, I don't think it is going to extend too much. But then, even if it ends 2 months from now, the effects will be felt in our economy, in the people the congregants of our churches, because their financial capability will not be the way they were. Some families will break, because when people are hungry, a hungry person is an angry person.
Yeah.
So there are so many dynamics. We need all of us to sit down and look at ways we are going to be able to mitigate in our own strength. And wherever you are, there's somebody who needs your help. Never think that you're too little, you have too little. Wherever you are, there's somebody who needs your help, even if it's just a smile from afar.
So wherever you are, there's somebody who needs your help, and if you can help, you help them.
You can. Everybody can help.
It doesn't matter.
Your level, what you have, everybody can help. So it's everyone to be ready to help.
All right. Also, there's been this issue of pastors who have been violating directives. I know earlier on we talked about how necessary and important the church is in terms of also just guiding members, guiding persons in whatever directives that have been given by probably government or heads of authority. But we heard of also cases of pastors who've been just allowing their congregants to still congregate. What do you say of such pastors who still violate the directives by authorities and probably by governments?
I want to say one of the things that God teaches us is obedience. And if you teach your congregants to be disobedient, they will also disobey you. That's number one. Number two, it is putting them at risk. And not only them, the whole country at large. But I want to say this. We don't all have the same level of IQ, yeah? In whatever profession, yeah? We have people who just take things their own way. And that's where the government comes in to bring in the discipline. But also, on the other hand, I would ask that the church should not be terrorized, because the church is being treated as if it's the one that is transmitting corona. If a pastor is caught with some 5 people and they have kept their social distance, you hear they have been ambushed. That's not right. People should always remember that a pastor, the man of God, is a voice of God. The Bible says, don't touch my anointed. Despite of that, let the pastors be obedient, be able to express themselves well, and also know that God will hold them accountable if they'll have to bring their people together and they get sick.
So pastors should be accountable and responsible even for directing their members in the right way. Okay. Again, there's also this issue, and this was just a story that was done by another local station in terms of pastors, especially from the coastal side of the country, who are saying that now churches need to be treated as essential services. Of course, in essence, meaning that they still have to go back to ensuring that gatherings are there, but now they say that they will ensure that they observe all the directives. This is in terms of sanitizing, washing hands, and ensuring social distancing. Very briefly, do you feel like that should be taken care of in terms of ensuring that churches are also go back and can be treated as essential services, provided they observe all the rules and directives?
Basically, the church is an essential service.
Okay.
That's one. But the church psychology is very tricky, because if you say in our church we have this amount of members and our building is this big, so because we need to do social distancing, we need about 20 people. Who are those 20 people?
How will you choose
How will you choose the 20 people? If you choose 20, the remaining, they also have needs. They want to come to church, so they will come. There's another thing. Somebody comes to church sick. As a pastor, if you're a pastor like me, I'm so compassionate. If I see somebody sick, I'll feel like just being close to them, hugging them. By the time I remember, if they were sick from corona, I'm also infected. So it's very difficult because you are moved by the problems of other people, by the hurting people. So the church psychology is a little bit tricky. Talk about children. You cannot bring them to church and then tell them, don't speak to your neighbor, keep your distance. It's very difficult. So I've really been also debating this in my mind. Is it doable? Is it workable? But maybe if we sit and try to think it out, maybe we can come out with a working formula. But at present, as per the church psychology, I know in our country, because we are Africans, we love socializing, it would be a bit tricky.
Tricky and difficult. So basically it stands that pastors, congregants, they need to follow directive and obey because obedience is important and it's necessary.
The way I see it.
All right. So I have been speaking to Pastor Irene Kimathi, just explaining to us how the church has been affected by this pandemic. Of course, more of what she is alluding is obedience is necessary and important, and it is better than sacrifice. We take a very quick break, but we still have another interview after this break, so stay with us.
This Monday on KBC Channel 1.
Sijalishwi na motives zingine anaweza kuwa nazo, and neither should you.
Don't get me wrong. I would have sold my soul to Abasi to get her money back.
Everything is gone, Abasi. Why would Mom do that?
To protect you.
From what?
You were raided.
Yes.
How?
Julia and I burnt it.
I need to know about everything that's going on.
Of course.
I told you that I'm not going with him. Please, just call a taxi.
Elena.
What is the color of love? Oh, tell me. To find time to leave me, Lucille, with 400 children and a crowd.
Since late last year, the coronavirus COVID-19 has emerged as a serious healthcare threat. This is an infection that has gone global and no one has been spared. The government, through the Ministry of Health, has put in measures to keep Kenyans safe against COVID-19, which is currently rampant around the world, with new confirmed infections and death cases daily. Such sanitization and screening of visitors at this border post and across every entry point in the country is very vital in preventing the spread of the disease in the country.
I'm very happy about the screenings that are going on in Tanzania and Kenya. I think it's very proactive that you're thinking about stopping it at the border so that it does not spread.
It is scary that a single cough here can lead to an outbreak of epic proportions. In order to prevent that, the government has instituted measures to keep Kenyans safe.
The facility has all the equipments you need, from handling a basic patient up to ICU setting.
However, you also have a role to play in preventing spread of infections.
Members of the public are encouraged to remain vigilant as the risk is still high. Let's maintain basic hand and respiratory hygiene.
It's just our general hygiene, okay? And that now means at workplaces, we should ensure that our work surfaces are clean.
Let's ensure that nimefanya proper sanitation ya mikono. Every time na board matatu, lazima ni sanitize mikono.
We have faced many severe challenges as a nation, and we have always found a way to rise above them. COVID-19 is no different, and will overcome the pandemic. Stop coronavirus. Follow all directives from the Ministry of Health. Wash your hands properly.
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
Why can't the child just be born already? I'm so sick and tired of being cooped up within these four walls.
Not gonna wait any longer, Julia. The moment has arrived for you to transfer the old woman's fortune to me. It's time for me to have my inheritance.
What's going on?
Miss,
What were you going to tell her?
I told you that I'm not going with him. Please, just call a taxi.
Elena.
Next on Corner.
I didn't find the money to gain anything. I found her because she's a child.
I'll tell you this. He has something that rubs me the wrong way.
Walter. It doesn't hurt having an Oyange in our corner. But be careful of Pamela. She's barely a kid. Don't be fooled.
Mbona unakuwaga na interest sana na hiyo gym? Na vile wewe ni sonko.
KBC, in collaboration with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, is broadcasting enhanced out-of-class learning on radio, television, and online. Catch the lessons every weekday on KBC Channel 1 from 2 to 4 p.m., on KBC English Service and 15 FM from 9:15 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Radio Taifa from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. KBC English Service, Radio Taifa, and 15 FM are also available countrywide on the free-to-air Signet digital TV platform, or log on to www.kbc.co.ke for live streaming, or download the KBC Online app on Google Play Store. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, ensuring learning no matter what.
All right, thank you very much for keeping in KBC. Eye on Politics starts now. This morning, we'll be focusing on what has been trending in the political arena in the past 1 week. Remember, so much has taken center stage, including Jubilee Party wrangles. But before we get into that this morning, we will just start by just giving brief comments on the COVID-19 first, on their take, as we talk about what is the state of the nation. Remember, coronavirus has infected over 2.3 million people globally. And the statistics in Kenya, so far we have 270 confirmed cases. In terms of the number of recovered cases, we are at 64. And in terms of the number of deaths, we stand at 14. This morning, to help us in this discussion right here, I'm joined by Daniel Orogo, political commentator. Karibu sana Dan.
Thank you.
And I'm joined by Karl Marx Odhiambo, governance expert. Karibu sana Karl Marx.
Thank you so much, Ram.
Comments given during this conversation, during this show, and neither mind do not reflect the stand of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Keep talking and engaging with us on our social media platforms. Remember, we are live on Facebook. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya. Tag me at Ram Aguko, at Jane Wamboy, and at Doreen Arange. Good morning. My name is Ram Aguko. As we start this conversation, gentlemen, let's first of all just give us a take on the COVID-19 case. What do you think about the stand of coronavirus? So far, there are projections that were given in the month of April, that by the end of this month, we know the numbers will have increased. But so far, this is the second week of April. I'm seeing that there is still hope. What do you think about this? Let me start with you, Dan.
Well, good morning again. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And I hope that we are keeping safe and maintaining and practicing what the ministry has instructed. But then, just like you've alluded to, with your remarks, is the fact that the announcement that was made some time ago by the DG that the figures would go much higher, would be expected to go much higher by the end of April. And I think it caused a lot of panic over, and I think that also enhanced the kind of management of, and the fight against COVID that we are seeing right now. But then I also like to recommend the work that the ministry have engaged into, trying to keep at bar, trying to put into measures that are, avoiding many transmission of the cases and infections. And with the cases that we received, I think we are very optimistic that we are going to still have a number of recoveries and that the cases are going to be minimized. But then also as we move forward, I think the numbers, the projection are purely based because we have not really engaged into serious, mass testing of Kenyans. And I think once we are going to engage into a serious mass, testing of Kenyans, in one way or the other, we're going to see a spike on the cases of infections of those who have turned positive, and probably that then would give us a clear image on the stance of what we are right now.
All right. So, Karl Marx, your thoughts on this? We're now getting towards the end of April. The numbers haven't reached the thousands that were predicted earlier. Do you think this is a sign of better things to come?
Thank you, Ram, for having me. I think when you talk of the projections of the numbers, it's something that I think, first of all, by the mere fact that now we cannot be seeing those figures coming the way they are, I think that's a great signs that things are going to be well. Mm-hmm. But again, I think the country needs to take precautions, which is very important, and also the guidelines given by the government to actually get to curb the whole menace.
All right.
And more importantly, I think, again, we need also to ask ourselves some big questions. Because, when we talk of the pandemic, first of all, I think immediately the corona came, the definition of the word pandemic, actually, we lost it. Mm-hmm. Not only that, I think there is no room for facts, because we've just decided to put this you instill fear, hysteria, mayhem, it's just a blind acceptance. Because from where I sit, I think we also need to ask ourselves, why are we not concentrating on these people who are, this big swap number that is actually recovering out of the corona without any medication? Why are we not actually giving them more of the airtime as we give to the projections of the numbers? So the country needs not to live in fear, because if it is that we are where we are, but again, we need not to instill fear in people. We need to handle this thing very, very, very well, because the most important thing is the end game. What is the exit strategy for the whole of this corona thing? Because don't forget that immediately after all that, we will be having no money. There will be no job. There will be no food. There will be no movement. There will be no business, okay? So what is the exit strategy that now we can contain the people who have been restricted in these areas? What will be the exit strategy for the whole of this menace?
Mm-hmm. And these are the questions that we still keep on asking right here on Good Morning Kenya. Remember, as we talk about the COVID-19, the government has given stipulations in regards to this: stay home, use hand sanitizer, stay safe, social distancing. But in brief, gentlemen, when it comes to our leaders, do you think that our leaders are giving us the perfect or the good example, showing us the way as Kenyans that we should follow? Daniel.
Well, it depends on the leaders that you're mentioning. Again,
just like we've alluded to in the comments as we were opening up, you realize that well, our the national leaders who are really spending their time and sacrificing to give us what is required, be at the forefront and putting their lives in line for for the country to combat the rise of COVID-19. But again, you've realized that there are cahoots of leaders, especially, I think you've seen, we had one member of parliament who was really found, with a number of people, in a bar, when all the measures were there that please stop crowding and avoid, these joints as much as possible. Recently also we've seen a number of MCAs, directly daring and violating these codes of conduct right now. But I think that, just like you've mentioned, leadership really begins with an example. Right. When you are given instruction, I think it's for the safety of people that you lead and yourself, it's important to follow up through and set an example by yourself.
Yeah. Now, getting straight to our discussion this morning, in 2016, specifically in September 2016, we had an event, something that took place in the country where President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto, together with their supporters, have launched the so-called Jubilee Party. This party vibrated with a lot of vigor, power, coveted by many in the nation. Jubilee Party was one party that was looking very bright when it comes to 2022 election polls. It was billed to be the next big thing. But it hasn't been all a bed of roses since 2016. 4 years down the line, currently right now, the discussion is about Jubilee Party wrangles. Who is to be blamed by this? When it comes to Jubilee Party, what is to be expected next? Well, we have at the moment a gazetted notice of proposed names to the party's National Management Committee, which Ruto dismissed as, and I quote, illegal and fraudulent. Karl Marx, your thoughts on this?
I thought you could have given Dan.
He's mentioned you to start
because Dan was the last one to speak.
Basically, I always say this, Ram. When I was here 2018, early January, I told you that Jubilee will not hold. And I'll still stand by that just as we talked about the 2002 NAC party, immediately after it propelled Kibaki for the presidency, that party died. PNU, again, 2007, died a natural death. Now, Jubilee is also, actually you can even see, without explanation, this is just self-explanatory. The party Jubilee, this wrangle is just a way of actually containing these guys to maintain the momentum while they're being taken for the slaughter. You get what I mean? There is nothing more to Jubilee. Because one thing that I want to tell you is this. The deputy president, he made a mistake by first of all counting his chicks before they even laid eggs. He's forgotten that he is one of the people who would have realized that the tables can be turned upside down. And he cannot weather the political storm as we speak today. Let me tell you this. I heard that the Jubilee Party had some changes within their party. And a old deputy president could not even know that there were some changes that were being effected in the party top leadership.
Where did he hear that?
And he could not even stop that. That is number one. Number two, how do you want to tell the entire nation that the second in command is complaining to the juniors over the party leadership changes? And why did he decide to go public, just like Wafula, just like Orogo, or just like Wanyoike, or maybe Kamau, on social media to air out his grievances? Now, we always hear, I am the second in command, okay? Meaning, you cannot actually get to complain over your juniors, but then you crack the whip. Why didn't he just decide to call his first in command and ask him about these changes, instead of actually now attacking or maybe exposing all the dirty linen outside here? But my biggest question is, if now the whole complaint has come out public the way it is, and generally maybe they be ignored, or maybe nobody gets to listen about with them, I mean, how will he take it? So he needs to get back and rethink about a new strategy. He needs to get back and stroke, because I think his team of advisors are actually misleading him. But for the game of 2022, the DP and his team, I think on this, you've got it wrong. You can start planning by 2032, because almost everything I always say in this show, they always come to pass.
And so has it been also when it comes to what some people have been saying that have come to pass, including Jubilee Party Vice Chairman David Murathe and Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli. They have said so many things that have come to pass, but putting that aside, because that's another debate also altogether, we have some members of parliament who said that the proposed changes in the party's National Management Committee without the involvement of the deputy president, who is the deputy party leader, is part of a wider scheme to blow him out of the party. Do you agree with that, Daniel?
Well, I fully agree with that, because let's put this into perspective, because one of the issues that has been misread all through is really not sticking to the processes, but trying to whip these processes out of, rumors and all these things that doesn't hold. Would you begin to say, first of all, that Jubilee, like any other party, was a party that was formed, as a vehicle to gain power? Any other political party, and Karl Marx would know this very well, that any political party is a party that is meant because their bid is to compete for political power and to be in power, and then Jubilee was one of them. The foundations of Jubilee is very clear, is probably on a national agenda. Mm-hmm. And its outlook is nationality and nationalism, prosperity, and these are the founding values of Jubilee Party. Secondly, may I also mention that there are other organs within the party that the deputy president belonged to, including the highest political organ or the branch of the party, and that is the National Delegates Convention. That is where, that is also where the deputy party belongs to. Coming into this issue, and this is why I said it is important to put this matter into perspective, that the National Management Committee becomes an executive wing of the National Executive Committee and the National Delegates Convention. And therefore, any ratification of the change of the members must seek the indulgence of the National Executive Committee.
Which do you think do you think they were sought?
That wasn't sorted out. And I also like to mention that the party of the constitution of the Jubilee Party states that the National Executive Committee must meet 4 months, at least each and every 4 months. That means that the meeting of the National Executive Committee should be thrice a year. That is the party constitution. As we speak, there has not been a convention of the National Executive Committee, and therefore the changes of the members of the National Management Committee cannot hold. And I like to recommend what the Register of Political Parties did, is to refer back that these measures would only be taken in 2 ways. One, it can proceed to the party's tribunal, or the way she did is to refer it back to the internal mechanism of the Jubilee Party. Now, Ram, one of the things that, all the distractors of members who are not members of Jubilee Party and do not understand the internal process of Jubilee did is always try to chunk out the participation of the deputy president out of Jubilee Party.
So that's why we go wrong.
This is where we go wrong. It is the right of any member of political parties, including the party leadership, down to the ward members of political parties within Jubilee, in their right to either forward their frustration to the register of political parties, either through a formal process or informal processes. And this is what the deputy president done in his own right. There is no political issue about this. It is a matter of putting your issue to be listened to the office that are concerned about it.
Now, Karl Marx had mentioned that the deputy president is complaining to people who are lower than him. Do you agree with that sentiment?
I don't think, because if anybody within the ranks of Jubilee, be it from the National Executive Council to the membership at the ward level, has a right to complain to the register of political parties. This is what I say. That is a totally different office and is an independent office as envisioned in the Article 260 of the Constitution, mentioning independent bodies and mentioning their function. So I think the deputy president had the right to complain or to forward his opinion to the register of political party as an independent office. I think that is within the right of Jubilee.
So he's right even in what he has done, considering that he is the deputy party leader.
And you see, there is also 1 minute. All these changes are to be done with the participation of the organs. The party leader has not spoken about this. And I think it is a matter of conflict of interest for anybody to insinuate the action of the party leader. He has not spoken about it. So I think it's important for, if he's going to speak about the functioning and the conflict that is within the party, then we are able to pick it up from his way. But until we speak, the party leader, who is also the president of the Republic of Kenya, has not given his personal opinion about this issue.
Of which we have some members of parliament, some leaders within Jubilee Party, including Secretary General Caleb Kositanyi, Nandi Senator Samson Charangai, and Honorable Oscar Sudi, including Moses Kwira and others, complaining that the silence of the president is worrying. So, Karl Marx, do you agree with what Dan is saying?
Now you could hear how Dan is struggling even to confirm their party leader engagement with the deputy party leader. Okay, if the president is not complaining, why is the deputy president complaining? Maybe that I'll leave for Dan. But now let me bring you back to this.
He has not complained.
Yes.
He hasn't
complained.
How
he has complained. That is why actually he sent, there's a letter he wrote to the political, to the register of political parties. That's a complaint. How do you treat it? If the changes were made and you were consulted, and you people, you've gazetted the changes, then who are you complaining about? Or who are you complaining to?
Wasn't it considered to be as his statement in regards to the changes, but not his complaint?
How do you make, okay, if the changes were made in your house, then how is it that you come out to tell us what happened in your house if it is not a complaint? Whatever they've been doing all through that were actually in line with what they always love, I think we've never heard about that. Now, Ram, let me take you back to what Dan was talking about. First of all, the deputy president, if you read Article 148 of the Kenyan Constitution, actually it prohibits him from conventionalism of the responsibility of appointment. One thing that these people are not telling the deputy president is that he doesn't have the power, okay? He doesn't have the power to be nominated by any political party. Actually, he is riding on the comfort, the philanthropy of the president so that he becomes what he is. But more importantly, he cannot even collect more than 5,000 signatures across the country. So therefore, if we try to look at it this way, okay, across the world, let me just use that. All deputies, look at what Pence is doing in America. Donald Trump might be doing everything against the will of so many people. But you can see the way Pence is, they're just more than loyal, more than submissive, okay? But our deputy president, instead of him being submissive, instead of him being loyal, what is he displaying? Arrogance, pride, know-it-all, okay? He is very abusive, and he expects that at the end of it, what he's talking about and what he's doing are going to match, my friend.
But now,
totally.
When it comes to that, what is it specifically that shows arrogance? Let's speak on facts now.
Exactly.
Factually.
Yes.
What is it that shows what you're saying?
Okay.
What have you seen?
Ram, if we have a political party, let me start from the political, because that is what we are discussing, right? We have a political party. We have the party leader. We have the deputy party leader. We have other officials within the party. And then we make changes, and one of us gets to convince or maybe influence other few members to also do some writings to challenge what has been done with the party. To you, you don't see that to be arrogance? If I say we don't get to campaign, and then you get back, have your soldiers, tell them they go on campaigning. That to you is what? When you get to a platform.
Karl Marx, speaking of that,
yes.
When letters have been written,
yes.
How does that show what you're saying?
Let me ask you, were we talking of a party that is united? Were we talking of a party that is actually following their constitution in order of disciplinary or whatever, in the case of anything? Now, if they could not actually sort out themselves within the party organs, they have actually brought this outside to us. But and the first person who has actually protested the changes is the deputy president. How do you treat that?
How is that arrogance done? But Karl Marx, you see, you've still not answered my question. Based on facts, how do you explain factually your statement?
What is the
explain for me the content of the letters and why the letters were actually
Karl Marx have not really. And I also noticed that he's equally struggling to explain the arrogance of how deputy president is arrogant. Listen,
he's struggling.
He's really struggling to explain. There is no yardstick of measuring how arrogant somebody is. But here we are. And the way you put it clearly is that the party has got internal mechanisms to handle a crisis. And one of these issues that we've been talked about is what we are actually seeing and trying to avoid as a party is not to prosecute this matter at the court of public opinion. As a party, it's important to do what the deputy president did, was to write a letter. Because remember, he was not the first person to respond to this issue. Just like the Political Parties Act, confined the register of political parties to notify the public of any issue that is brought to her office. And this is what she did, was to notify the members of the public that here the changes have been forwarded by the office of the Secretary General of the party about the changes of members on the National Management Committee. Therefore, anybody who has reservation on this issue has got a week to do that. And this is what the Deputy President did. Remember, not only him, in the letter that is dated from the Register of Political Parties, he has mentioned that almost 350 members, including members of the National Assembly, allied to the party, wrote to channel, their reservation on this issue. And that is why she refused to gazette it and referred it back to the party. Here is where we go wrong. The management of political parties is not at the behest, is not at the mercy of some members to micromanage how political parties is managed. It is important for us to put this in perspective that political parties are broad-based. It involves participation of the members, right from the National Executive Committee down there. And this is what has not, it's not only a matter of Jubilee Party. We've seen ANC equally struggling to curtail the members like Malala, who is going outside, to do things that are not aligned with the party.
Do you think now?
So I wonder, if this is an issue that we are trying to contain, and right now Jubilee is the subject of discussion, but we are forgetting is the problem political parties, not only in Kenya, in Africa, of maintaining, those who've deviated from their political manifesto and internal, democracy issues. So I think for us, as we speak right now, what we should be asking ourselves is, in the right of the political parties' right to participate, did our members do the right thing to channel their reservation to the register of political parties through the legal means that are provided, or did they violate that?
Isn't anything done legally right?
It is legally right what members did. And let us not only always ask about DP on this issue. The register said there are 350 members who really put their reservation forward. Why are we concentrating about the deputy president?
So Karl Marx, why do you want to concentrate on the deputy president, yet we still have so many people who are involved in this? And based on what some members are saying, that it is illegal and fraudulent. Why do you want to concentrate on one individual?
Sorry, as Karl Marx is coming in. You know, what if it is confirmed that the Secretary General of Jubilee Party, and what I have seen, did not, from the minutes that were conducted during that, it is tantamount to fraudulent. And what this should be doing is that people should be filing a petition to the party to ask Tuju to get out of the position. The likes of David Murathe resigned from the membership of Jubilee Party and therefore do not speak for Jubilee. Minor Commander, who is a member of Jubilee Party and a member of a nominated, I think these are people that are not speaking for Jubilee Party.
All right. I want us to move to the next topic. And Karl Marx, I would like you to answer that question as you comment on this. This is what the Deputy President tweeted. Because there's the question on who sanctioned all these processes. The Deputy President tweeted, and I quote, "The President and party leader of Jubilee Party did not and cannot be party to any fraudulent and illegal changes to officials of our party. This is the work of political rejects, conmen, and fraudsters whose party allegiances is already elsewhere. They should give us a break and leave Jubilee Party alone." Karl Marx.
Now you can get the tweet, the party leader. Before the names were effected, Ram, and gazetted, where was the Deputy President?
Why do you want to concentrate on the Deputy President?
Because he's the first person who wrote the letter to the registrar of political parties, and then the rest followed suit. Mark, you are a Deputy President of a political party. How do you now expect that you are now challenging your juniors instead of actually calling your boss to ask him that the changes that have been made within the party ranks, are you aware of them? And are we supposed to be writing to the to the registrar of political parties to question the same? Because these people could have even sorted out this thing on their own instead of actually bringing it out to us. And you can even get the tone of that tweet. Conmanship, rejects, very abusive.
Moving on to the next
discussion. You are referring to the leaders whom actually they have been working with from all that time. So if there have been conmen in their party from 2013 to date, Ram, do you expect an ordinary person to still believe that Jubilee is not conning them? If the deputy party, the party leader can actually attest clearly that there's a lot of fraud, there is conmanship in their party, so then that is what they've been doing literally to us. So these are the things we are questioning. He needs to come out and tell us whether they are together working towards building that party, or that party is already gone and they're looking for a way to actually leave the party, or to bring more chaos as they are actually getting towards forming up another new outfit.
Now, Dan, coming to you as we get to the next discussion, just briefly within a minute, do you think this problem, this issue will be taken to the political parties tribunal? Will it end up in court? Will this issue be solved amicably?
Well, you're looking at the provisions that are within the Political Parties Act, especially the Article 40. It's giving a direction of what to do, because I think that is what the Register of Political Parties did. It clearly stipulates that unless a conflict of that nature, it's resolved within the internal organs of a political party as envisioned within the Constitution of Jubilee. I think this is what has not been done yet. And for me, in her right, she was right on her caption that this matter needs to be taken back to the Jubilee Party to expedite it within the political party's rank. So if that fails, I think also the provision asks that if it fails, the tribunal will be given a month, and I think that is maybe 3 months definitely, to handle the issue, and will give a verdict. For me, the way forward is simple. That if there is a complaint of that nature, I think it's within the behest of our political parties to go back and use the internal mechanism of dispute resolution to handle that party.
All right.
If it fails, I think then it could proceed to the political parties' tribunals for expedition.
Give us your comments on this. Remember, we are live on Facebook. The Twitter handle is also up and running. We are live also on YouTube and on our website, www.kbc.co.ke. What are your thoughts concerning this? The hashtag, as always, is Good Morning Kenya. Tag me at Ramaguko, at Jane Wamboy, at Doreen Arange, are my colleagues' handle. As we bring this discussion to a close, let's finalize with what's happening in Nairobi County. We have the Nairobi Metropolitan Services that will now be in control of half of City Hall's 36.9 billion shilling budget for 2019-2020 financial year. But now, gentlemen, there is a problem. We have the Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko and Speaker Beatrice Elachi, who have disagreed somehow on the 15 billion shilling county supplementary budget and how it should be implemented. What are your thoughts concerning this, bearing in mind that the Speaker, Beatrice Elachi, says that she used the precedent set by former Speaker Alex Magelo in a ruling delivered on May 17, 2017, in which he ruled 6 reservations by former Governor Evans Kidero. She noted that as the Speaker, she has the power to rule on questions that require constitutional interpretation. Your thoughts on this, Karl Marx?
Ram, first of all, thank you. I just wanted to put a comment before I get to the...
Yes.
I wanted to tell you that, I've had some figures Dan quoted about they are controlling over 350 members of parliament. Do you know that is not just an ordinary number to talk about? If you are actually convincing the deputy president that is that strong and he has that following, okay, let him resign, as the likes of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga did and Raila Amolo Odinga in the past, and then he can actually now get to pay, or maybe we say he can now get to have a new form, or maybe a new outfit that can now rival these people 2022. But if all what we are talking about is just imaginary blogging of your team to portray that you have the numbers, you will be shocked that those numbers don't translate to anything.
Now
remember,
back to Nairobi County. Even as you comment on, you want to start on Nairobi County, yes. But even as you comment on that, as I said earlier, it's a disclaimer. Comments shared during this broadcast do not reflect the stand of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. They also don't reflect my stand as an individual. Karl Marx, continue.
Yes. Nairobi County, first of all, sometimes I'm even baffled or maybe bemused to talk about Nairobi County. Considering that, I don't know whether the governor knew exactly what he was signing, or he was thinking he was writing or maybe signing some love letters in State House for some leave of, impeachment or some protection, These are the dangers of having people who does not actually understand what they're doing and at what time. Because, do you know, money will always follow functions. And you cannot actually delegate functions, okay? And then you still question how they are going to work, or how they... Because some functions, again, they are attached, So not unless whatever he was signing he didn't understand, that is one. 2, or maybe he thought that he would run away from the responsibility and only to have the title governor without portfolio, okay?
You're talking about signing what exactly?
Because the transfer of functions to the national government. This is what has actually caused all this, because now the 15 billion that he doesn't want to sign about, part of what he's talking about has been transferred. So basically, I don't know what he was challenging,
Because so the assembly so far, the County Assembly of Nairobi, it had approved the supplementary budget for Bill 2020 on April the 2nd and sent it to the governor for assent. But the governor, however, rejected that draft bill on that Wednesday, accusing MCS of allocating funds to functions not transferred to the Nairobi Metropolitan Services.
Okay, he did it solely. He didn't consult the National Assembly while he was actually transferring all these functions.
And the supplementary budget?
And now that has actually emanated from the County Assembly, actually that will go to him. But again, I'm also questioning that, have we also suspended the ruling of him not, signing documents, signing bills, signing whatever, I'm still trying to get to understand that. But I think what Nairobians also need to understand, we are in a very big mess. Because even if we talk of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, we talk of the National Assembly, there is no way these people will be working in tandem. There will be no way they will be appreciating one another. I think there will be a lot of conflicts for the rest of these 2 years, because everybody would love to outshine one another, while the common man will be suffering. Because I don't see how we'll be talking of today, you want to sign the bills, tomorrow you create drama, the next minute you are actually promoting Hennessy's brands to be done what with the sanitization. You know, it's a lot of mix-up. So not unless we get back and understand exactly Nairobians that what do we want and how do we want it. The best thing we can do for now is that either the functions that were delegated, we see how the NMS is going to work upon with them, or we get back and actually now, push the entire county to relook into what they did. We need to review the whole of this process.
But now, let me come to you, Daniel. Was it a mistake by the governor to send the bill back to the county assembly?
Well, no, I think before even I come there, it's important that we state very clearly that the Nairobi Metropolitan Service is not enshrined within the Constitution. And it is important that to note that this was an executive function, this was an executive order, and it was within, the rights of those who did it for us to try to contain the mess that we had in Nairobi. Therefore, such a measure means that it ought to have found its way legally on how then would we back up that initiative or that a move. That is what we haven't seen. As we speak, the Constitution only recognizes the management of Nairobi City County either by a legislative wing through the county assembly or an executive wing that is headed by the governor of Nairobi. That is important to note. But now, the drama about whether to sign the bill or not, it is my thinking that, you see, once the county assembly has vetoed or have passed through, has passed a supplementary budget, it is important for the governor to assent to that. Because failure to do that, it means that there is a curtail. The functioning of the allocation of budget for some of the services definitely is going to be curtailed. This supremacy battle between the governor and the county assembly, and now the drama in the twists that have been given by the DG, I think, like Karl Marx have mentioned, is within the detrimental of the millions that are staying within Nairobi County. Because that then, it means if the supplementary budget is not passed, definitely the services are not going to be rendered for the residents.
It is Nairobi County residents that will feel the pinch.
Definitely.
When it comes to feeling the pinch, we had comments given by the governor saying that, but now not in regards to, or not directed towards the speaker, but towards the Nairobi Metropolitan Service boss. And here we're talking about the Major General Badi. He said that he was overstepping in his mandate. Do you agree with that, Karl Marx?
I don't understand when you say you are overstepping your mandate. You delegated some functions. Now, you can't expect to function normally. You will now function abnormally. Because generally, whatever used to be all yours, part of it is no longer yours. So then he could have, actually, I think maybe his legal team could have actually taken him through the entire document before he could have signed it. Because I know that functions will always, money will always follow functions. So immediately you delegate even one function, make sure that that function is actually followed with the money. So by the time he's challenging, now, because Mark Yu, legally he is the governor, but politically he's now grounded. Because he doesn't have a say, he doesn't have a voice, he cannot get back to the people, he cannot even consult his members of county assembly. These people are now even mad with him.
And does he have powers?
Sorry?
Does he have powers? You said he cannot consult, he cannot do blah, blah, blah. Does he have powers?
Immediately he delegated the duties, all the political powers, because the legitimacy, what actually made him to be the authority, he actually decided to slash it. So that's why people doesn't feel that power that he used to control over a period of time. So if we talk of the wrangles between them, or maybe he's overstepping his mandate, I think maybe he's not understanding that so many functions that he gave out are the core. Those are the key. They are the inner circle of what you use to control or maybe to run a county. Because immediately you've taken like public works, roads, whatever. Okay, what else? In Nairobi, you know, you cannot be having some museum somewhere, or maybe you'll not be talking of. These are the functions, I mean, I don't think they are that much. So he's only realizing that whatever he took away, actually gone with a bigger percentage, and some of them are also aligned. It's like you talk of environment, and the next person will come will be water. You talk of, so many things will be like, they're intertwined. So I think he should not be using the word, the guy is overstepping his mandate, but he messed up. Nairobi immediately decided to get Nairobi, functions of Nairobi County delegated to the national government.
When it comes to these functions that are given, because we are seeing a tug of war between the governor and many other people, when we involve the residents of Nairobi County, and this is where I would like us to comment on the welfare of the citizens or the residents of Nairobi County, are they also being put into consideration when it comes to this? Who will be looking into their welfare? Is it the governor or is it the Major General? Is it the county assembly that will be put also into strain when it comes to passing all these supplementary budgets? Who should we be looking up to? Dan?
Well, Ram, this is what I said before, that the Constitution delegated, made, once the citizens went and cast their votes to elect the members of the County Assembly of Nairobi and the governor of Nairobi, they delegated the function of responsibilities to these offices. And for me, I think that's what I keep on saying, that for us to overhaul the functioning of our constitution with an executive power becomes a problem, because then it causes confusion on the functioning, the normal functioning of the system. That is the delivery of services, to the residents of Nairobi. Well, you're looking at the budget, the budget of Nairobi is actually, what you see is bigger than any other budget in this county, or among as many counties. Nairobi has got always the biggest budget. But then it's important also to mention that there must be a reason of which I think the national executive decided to delegate the power. And it's in the agreement by a number of people that, services were not being given to the residents of Nairobi. And I think it is within the watchfulness of the new Director General now to render the services. And as we speak, I see you in a hurry. As we speak, it is important also to say this, that the Schedule 4 had given us the functions of the county. And most of the functions that I saw that were given to the DG were the very heavy functions. It left Governor Sonko with control of liquor and control of pornography and killing of wild dogs here and there. So I think within those functions, it is purely mentioning that the Nairobi County Assembly functions of the executive and that of the governor had been taken away and given to the DG.
Now, Karl Marx, with you, your thoughts on that, just in brief, in 10 seconds, if possible.
Yeah, I mean, Ram, just as Dan has put it, it's very clear that the functions, I said here before, that the functions that actually were delegated to the national government, basically those are what we call, those are the you can even use the word, those are the ministries that runs the county assemblies. But again, it's now upon the Nairobians to ask themselves, if we cannot get the services with the NMS, okay, we need now to start questioning these people. The county assembly, I think that is dead and dead and dead. We no longer even need to question them. But now the people who we've actually, the national metropolitan services that all the functions were delegated to, part of the functions, they are the people that need to be held accountable for now.
All right, thank you very much. That is Karl Marx Odhiambo, governance expert, and Daniel Orogo, political commentator. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for airing your thoughts and finding time to join me this morning. Karibuni tena, next time we will continue this discussion. Well, disclaimer, comments given during this discussion do not reflect the stand of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Well, that brings us to the end of Good Morning Kenya this morning. See you again tomorrow for another edition of GMK. My name is Ram Maguko. God bless you. God bless the work of your hands.